24th, North Kingston School Committee. I believe this is a business meeting to open the session. We start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we start this evening, I'd just like to explain that Erin Martini was not able to be here tonight due to some family difficulties, illness. And Evelyn is here, and also Candace is here. And we will hopefully be able to get through the meeting and get the information down, and also so that you know that we have the streamline. We will not have video links on the televised portion. Is that correct? Okay.
No, they was cooled off when we cut the example.
All right. So, before I do anything here, okay. Could you do a roll call, please, Evelyn?
Melvoy Benson.
Present.
April Brunel.
Here.
Larry Cerisi.
Here.
Renee Cockrell.
Here.
Dennis DeFrancis.
Here.
Kimberly Page.
Here.
Douglas Roth.
Here.
William Brennan. Legal representative. Yes, right?
Thank you.
Okay. Priscilla Fair.
Here.
No. Nedry. Okay. All right. Okay.
Well, before we start, I'd like to just make a few comments. Specifically, on behalf of the North Kingston School Committee, I would like to thank Dr. Fair for her leadership and perseverance through this academic year. Her focus has remained true to her commitment for excellence in education despite many difficult budgetary constraints. And I believe that we should recognize that another chapter has ended in the North Kingston School Department's history. And as a committee, it's even more important for us to remain focused on preserving the quality of our educational programs and remaining fiscally responsible to our constituents. And we must continue to strive to work collaboratively, agree to discuss the issues respectfully, and arrive at a resolve in the best interest of all our students. Be that, and again, reevaluating our meetings in the past 2 months, I think that I'd like to thank the public for adhering to the 3-minute constraints and presenting their public opinion, and also the fact that in our own discussions here, we can agree to disagree. We'll do that respectfully. That the questions should go through the chair, and I'm asking also that we do not respond to citizens' comment unless there's a consensus in the committee to address that particular question. And also, I believe we will make an earnest attempt this evening to get through the entire agenda and be able to end at a reasonable time. So I thank you for your anticipated cooperation, and I'd like to move on to balance. July, and my next meeting will be August 12th.
Just one subcommittee meeting commencing July on Thursday. Consolidation subcommittee will be meeting at 4 p.m.
Provides back and forth about it's needed to look at the statement you made that that comment was citizenship.
No. We have a policy, or we file the policy that citizen comments come to the mic and speak your comments. We typically don't engage in a conversation or a commitment to the citizens unless there is a consensus among the committee that we want to address that particular issue with them.
I think that would be a violation of the open meeting law. We have to have respect for when I first got over the school committee that if a citizen is speaking and you wanted to ask but you couldn't take action on what they said. I think that is allowable under the open meeting. If the citizen is speaking and I choose to ask him a question, but
Clarification.
of what's the law clarification, that we cannot vote on it.
Well, okay, and I wasn't clear. I meant if you want clarification of the issue, that's fine. I think what I was trying to address was a continuous dialogue back and forth, that would be the difference in that particular case. But clarification, I believe, is really something that would be fine.
I would have to understand with me that dialogue.
Dr. Francis, if the panel has no objections from the committee members, I would request that we move the accepting the resignation of Superintendent Dr. Chair Michael to the top of the agenda. Secondly, if there's no objections from the committee, I would request that I would request the form of a motion that we appoint a interim superintendent, Dr. Phil Thornton, effective So I would make a motion that we accept Superintendent Dr. Priscilla Bear's resignation effective June 30th.
Do we need a roll call vote?
If there's no objections from the committee, I request that we move the appointment of an interim superintendent. Next up on tonight's agenda, I would motion that we appoint Dr. Phil Thornton as the interim superintendent of the North Kingstown School Department at a rate of an additional 200 hours per year, effective today, June 24th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
This time, she was sort of discussion. I just wanted to thank Dr. Thornton for his willingness to step in during this transition period and assist the committee and the community in taking on the roles and responsibilities of the interim superintendent. I'm sure he'll do a great job. So, look forward to moving forward. Thank you.
Move to citizens' comments. We'd just like to say hi to Dr. Romero.
to the yard sale, kill cats, three people jumped up on me to ask me what I could do for them. So it's not that I have to ask, I tell them. Now this is my issue. I am going to buy an impeachable source. One of the members of the school committee has approached the member of the town council and has offered to deliver a majority of the votes of the school committee on the naming of the Hansford School. Now you know, Madam Chair, that the person might be naive or maybe motivated by will, but you cannot go around asking your colleagues for a majority of votes on anything without being in violation of the open meeting. Because if you have a majority of votes, that is me. So that is number one. All you have to do is ask them what they want in privacy, whatever you want to be. Was it you? I'm sure. And as part two, it was offered to this person, this counselor of the school, that the town should offer a Pedestal school $4,000 for a scholarship and $3,000 to pay to change the letterheads. But we all know that that has already been offered by somebody to do. That is not legally, it's extortion. Now I'm throwing these big bits down, but I don't want to go ever again through what we have gone through, you yourself and others activists, as things that are rumbling underneath in the carpet, but something going to be I am telling you, it's up to you to take the responsibility. I'm telling you, a town councilor has given this information. We cannot, or I have no reason whatsoever to question why I said so. So, now you have it. Thank you.
spectator, but you gotta understand the background. quick comment along those lines.
Madam Chair, I don't know if you wanted to put the letter that we received from the town into correspondence yourself, if you want to discuss it. If you want to do that, that's fine. I would defer to you. But I'd like to comment on it, if that's all right.
Well, I think that this is we have this letter here, but the public doesn't have this, right? This is just...
No, it's correspondence that came to us.
Well, why don't you just...
All right, well, I'll submit it to correspondence. The committee received this tonight. We received a letter. Oh, you did? Okay, the public does have it? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, from the town manager. This is in speaking to, I'll ask Mary Ann if you want to comment too. My feeling on this directly, that this is patently illegal. It's against Title 16. The town council does not have the authority to direct funds out of the control of the school department that we manage, and that once and for all, this type of behavior needs to stop. This town council has held on to surplus funds in the past. They've had to be directed not to do it. This town council has previously appropriated dollars, which is also against state law. They continue to act arbitrarily. I think we can take this under consideration, Madam Chair. If you want to think about it, if the committee wants to discuss it, if we want to appropriate that way, but under no circumstances is the town to take money from the school department in any way. And I will say I'm a little concerned that, and Ned, I'll ask you directly if you agree with this statement. Do you think the school committee should be paying? Because in this letter it references a conversation you had with the town manager, and in your analysis came up with the idea that we need to pay that back. So I'd like to know where we're coming from and how in the future we're going to follow state law as it pertains to appropriation to the schools.
I can specifically say my conversation with the town manager this afternoon was we're going to do what our respective bodies direct us to do.
What would be your guidance on this? Do you think we should pay?
Well, it would be up to the school committee. If the town submits us a bill, that would be up to the school committee. Likewise, if the town directs the town manager to send a bill, that would be up to the town council.
Go on, Larry.
Larry.
I'll come in next.
Matt, just for clarification, I'm just reading this for the first time. Is this a cut to the bottom line of our budget, or are they sending us a bill requesting payment for services?
I interpret this note, and based on my conversation with the town manager, that they're going to send us a bill with the expectation of payment for these services. That's my understanding.
Okay.
Okay. No?
I would like a clarification as to how this relates to the town charter. I'm leaning on the side of the town manager because the town council is responsible for all the finances of this town. Could I ask Mr. August to chime in on that, who's on those committees and so forth?
You can ask him. I'm not going to get into that one. The audit committee is in the article. I really don't know what is in play here. Something the committee has to decide.
And I think before we say what the council shouldn't do, maybe we should sit down with the council, go over the charter, and see where the charter differs from state law. And I know state law supersedes, and if we have the article and the number, then we know that it was an error. But before we go that route, I think this should be done in the spirit of unity. And may I say another word while I'm here? To the young lady that spoke about the naming of the school, state statute says that the town council has the direct responsibility and the duty of naming all public and private
We're going to be bringing
institutions.
that discussion up.
I don't want to get into discussion, but I'm just bubbling to bring that out since we got into something about the council. So that is state statute.
April, then Larry.
I would request some advice from legal. It doesn't have to come right now. It might be something that Mary Ann Carroll takes a look at. And I would request that we start having discussions and dialogues and meetings with our town council before we start, any type of confrontational issues on payments of the COTS program. We know this is a great program. We know that we need it, and I'm sure we can work it out. Yes.
Thank you. I agree with April. I think the question here is if the letter is a cut to the bottom line of the budget, or if it's a request for payment, if they're going to be forwarding us a bill and requesting payment. And I agree with Doug that at this point they can't make a cut to the bottom line of the budget. But I don't know if there's anything preventing them from sending us a bill or billing us for services, and I think that's maybe a question at some point. Ned could work with our attorney to interpret the letter and interpret where things stand with that as far as that goes, and maybe get back to the committee. Also, in the spirit of collaboration, I think before, as April said, before we get into a confrontation with the town council or any elected officials or government bodies swapping emails or letters back and forth, I think we really need to communicate and collaborate. And I think a lot of times the root of the problem is just a breakdown in the communication and collaboration. And I know we're tentatively looking at meeting dates in August to have a joint meeting with the council to discuss Wickford Elementary School, and I believe consolidation as well. Maybe, again, this is an agenda item that we could also put on the agenda for that evening. And it's just, I welcome and look forward to the opportunity of sitting down as two elected bodies and talking about these issues and working on them together.
Was there a consensus with the committee to present that, as April was asked for clarification with Mary Ann, and then also presenting that with the town council?
And clarification with the town, are they, going to send us a bill? We can simply just ask them, are they going to be sending us a bill? And that's pretty simple. It's just a dialogue answering back. How are we going to do this? How do you want to do this? And then definitely have this on the agenda for a discussion.
One of the things I would offer as a clarification, too, there's it specifies that there's over 500,000 unspent funds. We're still going through our final payroll numbers. And I know at the time approximately this report was run, I know we had a conversation in both the Controller's office and with payroll that they were still working on the final figures for what our final payroll payments are going to be. So, well, I appreciate that we're running the same system. We can't verify those numbers. I know we didn't have our final payroll numbers, and they're not an encumbrance against against what's in the system. So until that money's encumbered, there's really no way to know exactly what our final numbers will be. So as far as those final bullet points, without us confirming them, the amount of funds we have available is still to be determined.
One final comment? In the spirit of collaboration, it's obvious that we need to talk and plan these things out, especially as funds dry up and we need to move closer. Directed communiques like this that have happened repeatedly, coming over to the school committee and making us act in a certain way, describing certain behavior, is not collaborative. It's happened repeatedly. So I'm going to, while I agree with my fellow committee members about the spirit of collegiality and partnership with the town, I'm going to say that this is a repeated behavior of trying to drive certain behavior out of the school committee. And the line at the bottom of this letter, which says, I directed the finance director to hold this amount as a receivable and anticipate approval of the town council's request by the school committee, is a blatant violation of Title 16. They have no standing whatsoever to direct this school department, this school committee, this chairperson, interim superintendent to do anything relative to the budget. So I agree. I think, Mary Ann, you need to kind of issue a statement here. I think we should talk to it, but this needs to stop.
Ned and I had a conversation about this morning. It was my understanding originally that they were going to send us a bill. Correct?
That's what I'm interpreting this letter as, a bill telling us that they're going to bill us $134.
Send us a bill, which is perfectly legal and allowable. They can send us a bill, and then the committee can decide whether they're going to pay it or not. This letter doesn't say that. It says they're holding the funds, and if that is indeed their intent, then that obviously is a violation of statute, because a town council can't hold up school department funds. But when, as I said, when Phil and Ned, Dr. Thornton and Ned and I had a conversation this morning, it was our understanding that they were going to send us a bill. I made a call to the town solicitor asking him what was going on. And did he give a legal opinion? He wasn't asked a legal opinion last night on this issue. He said to me, however, if it's a bill, then that's perfectly legitimate. But if they're holding back our funds, Mr. Roth is correct. They can't do that. It is illegal. So we need clarification, is mine.
Well,
I would just like to say this one thing. I don't think we would be at this juncture because the town council put themselves out to meet with us, Mr. Roth, when you were chair and you had a council.
We met several times, Mrs. Johnson.
You had a council. I'm not getting into discussion with you, but I just want to say,
right.
we don't need these people here thinking all that about the council.
So this is
I'm
the
going
first
to
one.
ask that we do exactly what we just agreed to, and that's the end of the conversation. Kim, do you have something?
Yes, I have other correspondence. We're ready to move on. I received correspondence, as I think everybody did, from Francesca Morel. They're telling us that on June 18th, the Rhode Island Cox Sports Award were held at the PPAC, and of the 7 North Kingstown student athletes who were nominated, 5 of them came home with awards that night. Samantha Emmerich came home with an award for cheerleading, Elizabeth Beisel for swimming, Brett Utley for soccer, Greg Fallon for lacrosse, and Sam Morrell for golf. So that's very impressive, and I'd also like to wish Elizabeth Beisel good luck as the Olympic swimming trials are coming on. So I'll hand this down so that...
She'll make it.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for correspondence? Disclosure of executive session votes.
Okay, there was a vote to table the grievance hearings, and the vote was unanimous. A vote was taken to approve the executive session minutes from May 20th. The vote was unanimous. A vote was taken to approve the executive session minutes from June 10th. It was 5-0, 2 abstaining.
There was a vote to seal the minutes of executive session, 6-1. Doug Roth opposed. And then a vote to recess the executive session, and that was unanimous.
Thank you. All right, on the consent agenda, we are pulling E6.
That's being removed.
Yes.
Yeah, remove it.
Is there anyone? And I think that's the only change we have on this. You have a revised, you should have a revised agenda. Okay, so that's what we're reading from, because there were some changes on the consent. And do I have any exemptions to the consent agenda? Doug?
I'd like to exempt D2.
D2? You have exemption for BJ. What is it?
What is it?
The supervisor's contract
I'll
approval.
ask to exempt that.
Renee?
C1,
C1?
D3,
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
D3.
F4,
Wait, hold on.
F4.
and F5.
F4, you say?
Yes. And then, I think J just got exempted, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And 12, what letter is that, F12? Yeah, F12.
Approval of new positions.
Yes.
Anyone else have any exemptions? Larry?
Dr. Thornton, was it? Curriculum adoption, was that the? Yeah. Aye. Aye. Yep.
Stay
Aye.
together right now. I'm going if I get them going. This
And,
is
I think that's
K?
that's all I have.
Don't we have to do K? Or is that all?
K was moved
Oh,
on.
it was moved up, all right.
Okay,
Okay.
What did Larry exempt?
Aye.
Aye.
way in the back.
Okay.
What is it?
J, so it's been exempted.
Larry?
If there
They already,
yes, J has already been accepted.
okay.
If there are no further exemptions, I would motion to approve the consent agenda minus the exemptions that were noted.
I'll second.
Thank you.
I don't need to exempt this, but I just wanted to make a comment on F1A, whenever that would be appropriate. The retirement of Pat Cole. If now would be appropriate, I'll do that.
That's fine.
Okay. I'd just like to, I know that Pat Cole is retiring from Hamilton Elementary, and I know that Hamilton Elementary has had her around there for a long time, and they really appreciated all that Pat has done, so she will be missed. She's a valued head clerk there, and so I wish Pat Cole well in her further endeavors, and as I'm sure she will have a good time, and hopefully she will win the lottery between now and her retirement date, as she's been always wanting to call in rich.
Good luck. Okay, thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second for the consent except for the exemptions. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. So for the exemptions, C1. Renee?
I just cannot vote on that, so I was asking to be exempted so I could abstain from the approval. I was not at the meeting.
Okay.
Motion to approve C1.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay, Larry, you made the motion to approve it?
Yes.
Ken second.
6-0 and 1 abstain. Renee was an abstain.
Okay.
Okay, we go to D2.
Thank you. Ned, quick question on the budget report relative to the surplus. Kind of going back to this letter, I think it's also in the bottom lines in the report. Are we looking at a $53,000 surplus or a $500,000 surplus? With understanding that the payroll visibility is still kind of shaky.
There's two pieces to this. One, consistent with the question about the $53,000, that's the anticipated surplus as of this writing. So that would be for the fiscal period ending May.
Okay.
June numbers we don't have yet. I do not believe at this time that 500,000 will be our ending amount, but that's without investigation, and the month hasn't closed. So I can't say what our ending balance will be in June.
And that would be audited in December anyway. You wouldn't be,
Yeah, we'll be
any
going through an
number
audit
that comes up
process.
with wouldn't be finalized until
The receivables will be coming in over the course of the next few months anyway. We'll continue to get bills, we'll continue to have receivables come in. So until the year's closed, I couldn't say.
Thank you.
Okay.
If there's no further discussion on D2, I'll motion to approve D2.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. D3.
Ned, do we have a number for the cafeteria deficit? As of April 30th, it was 83,000. Do we know what that is for year end yet?
This is the most current figure that you have in your financial report. I don't know what it is for May yet.
Do we anticipate it's going to be a larger deficit or a smaller deficit?
If anticipated sales come in at the end of this month, which we anticipate some sales coming in, I think we'll be in the 70 to 80 range.
Over the last 4 years, this has continually been an issue with negative figures, and I think we thought with some retirements this might change, but it still seems to be headed in, obviously, the wrong direction. So I would just like to ask that this be an agenda item, the cafeteria services. I think we may have to explore other options, perhaps outsourcing. I'm not saying I support outsourcing yet, but I think that it's a discussion we're going to have. So I'm just requesting that.
One of the things I would add is we took action, I'd say within the last month, to eliminate positions. And those positions roughly add up to what our deficit is. So we're anticipating a break even for next year. When we went through the
You
budget,
just said.
what's that?
What was the fair? Oh, so you think next year we'll break even?
Yes. We took action throughout the budget process to eliminate positions from the cafeteria fund. And those positions add up with salary and benefits to roughly what our deficits have been running this year.
Does that include the ones that I've exempted later to where we're adding positions back in the cafeteria?
We've reorganized the cafeteria operations. We have a net reduction, I believe, of 4 FTEs.
Okay, so maybe we could watch, maybe not an agenda item right now, but if we could watch that for
Yep.
maybe mid-year next, well, I won't be here, but if you guys want to talk about it mid-year next year.
That's
An agenda item. I just think we have to really try to get this
That's the discussion we've had with the food service supervisor, myself, as well as food service personnel. Have had that discussion, which is we anticipate that we'll determine where we are next year around December, and at that point, we'll know if we are, in fact, going into the black or if we're not, and then we need to consider outsourcing.
Okay, thank you. With that, I make a motion to approve D3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We have E, no exemptions on E. F1A, that was a discussion, Pat. F4, approval of non-renewal, Administrator.
That was me. I am concerned, I'm very concerned with what we've done to the technology department by eliminating this position. And in light of the fact that Dr. Fear has left and Mr. Thornton, who was going to take the brunt of the duties of that position, I am wondering what the committee's feelings are on adding this position back for 1 year until we see how everything plays out with a new superintendent. Mr. Thornton would obviously have more time to do the position at that point. And I would also like to talk to neighboring districts about some consolidation versus just wiping out the duties altogether, because I'm really scared we've really hurt the high schools. And from what I hear, the middle schools, e-portfolio projects, and I think that we may be putting some jeopardy there educationally. So I just wondered if the committee would like to discuss possibly adding that position back for 1 year.
Ray, I support the conversation. I think it's publicly known how I've responded to the IT situation, especially in the conversation we had in light of our executive changes and what we were discussing earlier about Dr. Thornton, Dr. Thornton, I'll ask you to speak up too if you want to talk about how many balls you're going to have in the air in the interim. It's a lot to ask any one person to wear 3 administrative hats. So I would support that notion. In fact, I'll offer it as a motion to restore the IT director for the period of 1 year.
Second that.
So what we're doing here is pulling 5,
Pulling the non-renewal.
4, F4, and is there any discussion? Larry?
Thank you. I think, just to follow some process and protocol, the first question I would have is that this committee's already voted on that in the last meeting, school committee meeting that we had, and again, this seems to be becoming a habit. I would think that someone who voted in the affirmative would have to make a motion to revisit the vote. We're revisiting votes that we've already taken in previous meetings. And the procedure for that would be somebody who voted in the affirmative would have to motion to revisit the vote. That would be step 1.
Point of order. Trying to recall those minutes and those votes, but I don't believe the IT director's job ever came up for a vote. Other supervisory positions did come up. The superintendent specifically said she was not going to offer that, so this committee did not specifically vote on the IT director's position. We did vote on the finance director's position and on the athletic director's position, and I believe we did ultimately get to the principal's positions as well. But the IT director never did come up. If I recall correctly, maybe I'm wrong, I'm not sure. But
I believe the position in the superintendent's recommendation of the budget cuts, that position was within those budget cuts, and I do believe there was consensus around those budget cuts, except for the additional days for the principals. And that was my recollection, that there were some very specific budget cuts, and that was inclusive in there.
We did, I'm sorry. We did, in fact, vote on those budget cuts recommendation that the superintendent put forward that evening, which I have with me from the previous meeting, and the IT director's position was in that list of budget cuts.
No.
Mr. Cerise is correct. And if the school committee secretary, who isn't here tonight, some of you have it, and you can get your hand on it, that was the recommendation of the superintendent.
Okay. I'd like to ask Dr. Thornton, in lieu of, again, these administrative changes, as well as the fact that that was some of the responsibility being placed on you, what is your consideration of this at this point?
I would support the 1 year restoration. My honest question would be in terms of the timing. As of June 24th, can we at this point safely say we have the funds in hand to do that in June? That's my only caveat. Or is that an August conversation possibly? I don't know if as of June 24th we can say the money's in hand. That's my question.
April.
To be responsible and delve into other cuts that we made, I mean, at that time, you have to start bringing up, a principal at Wickford Middle School. We had people talking about paras. We're talking about paying for a possible COPS program. We're talking about we really don't have all the information in as to, even what Medicare is going to be next year and how much money we're going to have. I really think we should be very careful and prudent at this time, and it's not as simple as it looks, and it perhaps deserves time and attention on an August agenda. If we couldn't afford to have leave back, perhaps we can afford to have partial help back in the IT department, or at least someone else, or not, a director's position, but somehow, some other kind of a compromise back into the IT department. We also cut out the educators from the IT department. So I think there's a lot on our plate to decide, cutting a principal, cutting a director in IT, and where is best to put money back in if we do have extra money. I'm still kind of fuzzy as to exactly how much money we have, and I don't think we have those answers yet. And if you don't know how much money you have, how could you say you can spend it? So I'm not ready to make a vote on that decision yet. Couldn't approve it.
How much money we have that we
Right
did
now-
not anticipate?
Right now, it's my understanding that any action we would take would be unbudgeted.
Would be unbudgeted.
Unbudgeted.
Now, that includes revenue as well. As you received in your packet, we're anticipating unbudgeted revenue in the order of $289,000 that appears a solid number, which is state aid. And then there's the gambling revenue, which is up to an additional $236,000.
And you haven't gotten it.
So that is money I would not recommend spending, because beyond 1 or 2 months' income, we don't know what's going to happen with that. However, the $289,000 does look like a solid number. That said, both numbers, revenue and expenditures, would be unbudgeted at this time. Our budget is set, so our bottom line budget is set. I've asked our legal counsel regarding our bottom line budget, how we can interpret that, if the additional revenues can be included, so
And what was the answer?
we're still working on that.
We had a conversation about this morning, and I also contacted the town solicitor about this amount this morning. Right now, there's a question of how our budget was approved through the town council, and whether this additional money would be coming to us, or whether it would be going to the town with a cut in what they are giving us. In my conversation with the town solicitor, what we talked about was we need to have a meeting between the school committee and the town so that we can sit down and discuss these monetary issues. One being this $279,000. I mean, we talked about all the problems, the COPS program, the $279,000, et cetera, because if they say they are not going to give it to us, our option then is to sue the town, and then are we suing the town for $279,000? So my suggestion to the school committee is that we definitely have a meeting with the town and try to work out all these figures. Right now, we don't have this money.
Thank you, Doug.
Ned, with benefits, what's the value of the superintendent's contract? She was being paid,
Yeah, somewhere in the order of 170, I believe.
and I know that we've agreed that we're going to pay Dr. Thornton a $200 a day stipend, so I would say this is budgeted, the money is there, there's a differential between what is in that superintendent's contract.
Breakage in the
There'll be breakage in that contract, which we can rebudget right away to pay for the IT director. You'd be and I just want to state to the risk that we're looking at here, in last year's interim situation, you had an interim superintendent that had a curriculum director, an IT director in place, a special ed director in place. Right now, you don't have any of those positions. You'd be having an interim superintendent with nobody in place. Excuse me, at some point we have to address the operational risk issue. Dr. Thornton, I invest a lot of faith in you. You're doing a great job. If something happened to you on the way to work, this district would be in a significant pinch. You don't need to do that. We've talked tonight that the IT area is one of those areas that you think that might be a ball in the air, that might be a challenge for you. I think this is really simple. We don't approve F4, that would be not approving the non-renewal, and that we can move forward in putting the IT director back. And it seems to me that it would be a wash with the superintendent's contract.
April.
I think Renee had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask if you would respond to what Larry had said, because if Doug's motion is not valid, then the discussion's not even, we shouldn't even be having the discussion.
Can I ask what?
I think the point I raised was that there was if I understand correctly, there's a motion to restore the IT director's position to the budget. And what I had said was that it's becoming a pattern that we're revisiting votes that we took at previous school committee meetings. We voted to accept the superintendent's budget recommendations at the last meeting. That motion passed. Those budget recommendations had within it the elimination of the IT director's position. So somebody who voted in the affirmative would have to motion to revisit that vote, if I understand correctly.
You need to I'm sorry, I wasn't, you need to reconsider the vote of last meeting to cut the money from the budget, which somebody who voted in the affirmative to cut it can now make a motion to reconsider. You can then undo that cut, and then you can, remember, this person still has to be reappointed because there was no contract given to her, and she was noticed in December that her position was being eliminated. So you have to put the money back. You have to undo the cut, because you cut the money from the budget at the last meeting. So you have to undo the cut, and then you have to vote to reappoint or to provide a contract to this person if that's what you decide to do.
Okay, but I want to get a little bit of clarity. We anticipate having some money, but we don't have it. We're being told that the money is not there, it's not definitive. When you talk about a breakage with the superintendent, Doug, you're talking about a superintendent that's not going to be here for a year?
Not sure what that option looks like.
But I mean, if we hire someone in
October-
I mean, that's not a breakage, in my understanding, when you, so I think that, going back to what you just said, Mary Ann, right now, if we were going to do anything with this motion, or with this action right now, we'd have to go back to...
At the last meeting, 2 weeks, at the last school committee meeting, you voted to accept the superintendent's recommendation to cut the money that was budgeted from the budget. This money was cut from the budget. So you have to reconsider that, because you already took that action. You cut the money out of the budget. That's why this is under consent tonight, because you've already cut the money. So you need to reconsider that motion to cut the money. That would then, once you reconsidered it and voted to not cut that money, then that money would then be not cut from the budget, and then you could turn around and reappoint this person.
But we'd have to cut something else from the budget.
You absolutely would have to cut something else from the budget.
You're exactly right, Chairman.
Right. Because when you made your cuts last week, you balanced the budget. So if you're going to undo that cut, then you have to come up with another cut to balance the budget, because at this point, we have no idea about that $289,000.
Done.
Mr. Teresi's point was whether or not...
Point of order.
Right. Somebody who...
Mary Ann?
Point of order.
Yes.
So I guess a question I would have then is, what's the validity of even having this on the agenda? If the committee votes tonight to reject the non-renewal, where does that leave us? If we exempt this from consent and we vote tonight, because we're going to have a question, if we reject the non-renewal that's on this agenda, where does that leave us?
With an unbalanced budget.
Right.
A balanced budget.
With that in
With an
position.
unbalanced budget.
You'd still have a balanced budget. You'd still have to look towards trying to figure out how we're going to keep the IT director. You have to start looking
I
at
think
it.
if we're going to, we may have to go to the consent and vote.
So what's this doing in consent if it's not operative?
Personnel action.
It's a personnel
Personnel action.
So a non-approval vote means
Are you
what?
saying something by doing that? Because I'm not sure I'd interpret
A
that.
non-approval, if we vote to reject the non-renewal,
Yep.
which is what we're doing, where does that leave us tonight?
With an unbalanced budget, and somewhere where we'd have to find a cut to balance the budget at some point in the discussion, but we have not even voted
On
yet.
the
on this.
agenda.
Yep.
It's not on the agenda. We'd have to put it
It's
on the
right
agenda.
there, we're
Ken?
discussing it in consent.
Well, I don't think that would leave us. If we don't
We're having
accept
this discussion.
if we don't accept the non-renewal, then what happens is we've already given this person a layoff list.
Right.
We don't have a contract with them. So essentially, there is no hire. So it doesn't unbalance your budget.
Point of
It
order.
merely,
Point of order.
I'd like to finish my
Yeah, point of
comment.
order.
I don't
That's not-
see what I've said that is wrong.
I'm making a point of order. It's up to the chair whether she wants to recognize it or not.
Here we go.
Please, please. The comments are not necessary. I would like to allow Kim to finish her statement, and then if you could address your point of order. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is part of what we're trying to be, is civil. So no comments on the sidebar, please. Thank you.
For everybody. Agreed.
So what I was saying is, I don't think that necessarily unbalances our budget, because we don't have a contract with this person. There's already been a non-renewal list. So what it merely does is that we say, we're not putting them in the non-renewal, but it then begs the question of, what do you do? And at some point, if during this conversation it is found out that we do have money, then it has to be the question of, are we going to offer them a contract or not?
Larry, and then I'll get Renee.
Thank you, Dr. DeFrancis. I'm sorry, but this whole discussion is absurd.
It is.
There's a need for somebody who voted in the affirmative to make a motion to revisit the vote before we even have this discussion, but we've already had the discussion for 15 minutes that we shouldn't even be having. So unless somebody's going to make a motion that voted in the affirmative, we shouldn't even be having this discussion. We're revisiting a discussion and a vote that's already taken place. And this is why the meeting will go round and around in a circle for an hour on a discussion that shouldn't even be taking place. If we follow proper procedure and Robert's rules, the meetings will move along more efficiently. This is a discussion that should not be taking place.
Okay, Renee?
I was going to kind of echo the same thing, just that if the council thinks that that motion is out of order, then if someone who can make it, wants to make it, please make it, and if not, then let's someone make the motion to approve or to disapprove or whatever.
Or to
because I don't
reconsider,
want
right?
to talk about it forever.
Is there anyone who wants to make that motion?
I want to go home.
That would be, according to the minutes, would be Mrs. Benson, Mrs. Brunel, Mr. Cerisi, and Mrs. DeFrancis, Dr. DeFrancis, that could make that motion to reconsider. So I guess Madam Chair's point of order. So we're saying that my motion's out of order, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll withdraw it.
But I would like to ask Mary Ann, in regards to Kim's comments, this individual has already received a non-renewal.
Correct.
Let me just, and if I'm off, you can tell me, but if we were to find out that the money that we anticipate coming back to the district is in fact our money, then we can revisit again those...
In August, if you define that you have the money and you want to put the position, if you get the money, and then you can put the position back on. Right now, all I'm telling you is in my conversation today, although we think there's a pool of money, we need to meet with the town council to see how we're going to...
Okay, and I believe, Dr. Thornton, you indicated that you would anticipate if there was money, and this would be an August issue.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
All right, so...
I haven't spoken.
Yes, Mel.
I agree with Dr. Thornton, and if we're going to get so technical, this is not even on the agenda. But I agree with Dr. Thornton, after we have the meeting with the town council.
Okay. So we have F4. John?
Just one clarification, Mary Ann, if I may ask. If the notion that anticipated revenues actually increase from our budget projection, whether they be from the state or the federal level, are we going to be discussing whether all those funds go over to town council control? Federal funds, Medicaid funds?
No. Right now, from what I understand, and again, I haven't given this a lot, it came to my attention this morning, and actually I asked Ned to research how the motions were made at the town council when the budget was passed. It's my understanding that the town council at a meeting passed a bottom line budget for the school department. That bottom line is what we have to work under unless we are, that's our bottom line budget. Now, when the state aid figures came in, it just so happened that we ended up with $289,000 more than the state aid figure that went in that budget. However, that doesn't automatically come to us because now we need to sit down with the town and say, okay, we've already been given a bottom line budget. We can't add to that bottom line budget, but can we spend this money because now we have extra money? That's a conversation we have to have with the town. We have to look at whether it's supplanting or not supplanting. There's a lot of issues that we didn't have time to look at in the last couple of hours.
State aid, if I may follow up, Dr. Francis, state aid is paid from the state to the school system. It is not a pass-through through the town. They are not part of that appropriation.
However, go ahead.
Seriously, if there's other revenue channels, state aid goes from state to schools. The town does not flow through from that. If the town wants to, if I understand it correctly, the town could cut our bottom line if they wanted to get together and do that and not make that connection, but they cannot, as I understand it, stop the flow through of money.
And you're right, you're absolutely right.
Must appropriate the money.
But you're right, they have, but the bottom line is the bottom line. What they could do is not give us as much out of the taxpayers' money. We're going to get that money from the state, but the question is, how much is the town now going to have to give us? And all I'm telling you is, in 2 hours today, we didn't have time to sift. This came to our attention, we've been working on it, Dr. Thornton and Ned and I have been on the phone back and forth. We had a conversation, Ned had a conversation with the town manager, this hasn't been worked out. Right now, we don't know how much money the town is giving us. You're right, we're going to, in other words, the $279 from the state is coming to us, but does that...
So you're discussing whether the town is going to reduce our appropriation accordingly?
Yes.
Okay.
Larry?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick points. I think in the absence of the clarity of a bottom line budget figure, as I believe Ned had said, that any action we take would be unbudgeted actions at this time. In addition, I believe at the last school committee meeting, Superintendent Fear made a recommendation to eliminate this position, and her plan at that point was to fulfill the roles and responsibilities of that position in an internal school department consolidation. I believe she said education would be handled, the educational piece would be handled by the curriculum office. I believe she said that the nuts and bolts of technology would be handled by the technology manager. Let's not forget, we still have a manager that works in our school department, technology department. There was, and as I said, we haven't identified funding. So I, at this point, would make a motion to approve agenda item F4.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Doug?
I'd like to state for the record that Dr. Fear made that proposal with Dr. Fear's workload considered into the proposal, and that what's that?
Dr. Thornton.
No, her own, and specifically designated those duties of IT to the curriculum director. That things have changed. Things have changed significantly, and we keep adding elements of risk to the delivery of education in the district. That's all I'm going to say. We need to find the money. We need to make this decision to replace the IT director.
Could you make that addendum? Go ahead. Sorry, Mel?
Go ahead.
I think, and I feel 100% sure, we know that the money from the state comes to the school department. So you say, I haven't seen the law where it says it does. We know that the town council is director of the town finances. If they so chooses, if we get an increase from the state to cut the bottom line of their appropriation to save the taxpayers' money, we are not two cities here. Look at your tax bill. It says on there appropriations for schools. We're not two cities. Taxpayers put money in here too. And we have approved that. And if the money comes and we can see it, the IT director works under the same callback as the others. She would be one of the first I would want to call back. And I think we're having a discussion illegal because it wasn't on the agenda.
We did already vote. I think I'm willing to pull back that motion and rephrase that motion to approve agenda item F4 with the understanding that if there's unanticipated additional revenues for the school department, bottom line revenues added to our budget, we can revisit this discussion.
A second?
Repeat your motion.
Yes, please.
Okay. Approve agenda item F4 with the understanding that if there's unanticipated
If there is unanticipated?
additional bottom line revenue to the school department's budget, we revisit this issue.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? Tim?
Well, I'm worried that this is the year that we start our 8th grade e-portfolios, and it may be that we may technically be able to do that, but we need to instill that into the curriculum. And times have changed since the last time that we were together. And so I don't think that that's going to be able to be covered if we don't have somebody in that position. I think we can still not accept the non-renewal, and we can still bring this up at a further time and still be within our balanced budget. Because as I said, we have not given this person a contract, and it's the sort of thing, if they have not been budgeted, so we would still be within every right to be able to do that, to come back later. I would think that the town council, if they're going to change our appropriations, I thought that had to, once they approved our budget for the year, that they had to bring up hearings in order to be able to take back the budget. And that it wasn't just a one vote that all of a sudden they said, we take this back. It has to be a formalized hearing that they have to set up if they're going to change our budget. So it's not the sort of thing that they're going to just be able to do that in one meeting. It'll take a long period of time if they decide to do that. So it would be a lot more difficult for them to take away our money than it will for them to merely say that this is the state aid that comes in and we therefore get it.
Dr. Thornton, you mentioned earlier that you supported the notion of replacing the IT director given the circumstances the district's facing leadership-wise.
I would, given we had that money in hand, yes.
Understood. So, you know what, at the end of the day, we're responsible for delivering education in a quality manner to the parents and kids of this district. The interim superintendent is saying that he supports that notion. I think we all understand the risk involved of putting everything under the control of the operational day-to-day management of one person right now. One person. It's risky. In my mind, it's the wrong thing to do. I think if we have state aid coming in excess of what we saw, and the town council is open to sending communications, I think we should send a letter saying that we intend to meet, we'd like to discuss it, we remind the town council of its responsibilities under the law to hold the hearing that Mrs. Page correctly noted, and that we intend to spend the state aid figure of what we need for the IT director under that consideration, that we ask the council to leave the appropriation in place. They need to issue the understanding back to us that we are working under extraordinary times. These kids work under the guise of the town council as well. I can't believe that this town council would cut that. I'll finish my statement if I could. I can't believe that the town council would reject that request to spend the state aid in that manner.
I'm kind of confused here. I just heard legal advice saying that we cannot go in this direction. So,
They're just having a discussion, but we're voting on...
right, but we already had this discussion. The only part that changed was that we were going to be positive and visit this in August. Nothing else has changed, and legal advice said we can't do it. Can we just vote?
I think April brings up a good point here. There is no need for us to take an action tonight on this because we've already taken an action on this. This doesn't even belong on the agenda. So I'm going to withdraw my motion.
No, you need to take action on this tonight.
Why? It's all right.
On 4A, we have to...
You need to vote on 4A so that it complies with the Administrator's Bill of Rights.
Okay.
You need to take action.
Okay, so again...
So the only change
is to say to revisit in August.
In August, so the only dialogue should be talking about visiting in August.
Right.
Okay, so...
One other point that I'd like to make, and I'm done at this. I think, for the record, Dr. Thornton's comments, to be clear, were he would support the position if he had money in hand. That's the key words, money in hand. And that's what we're saying as a committee. That's what my motion's saying. If there is money in hand, we'll come back and have this discussion. I think that's reasonable enough.
So let's call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
This is in favor of... Let's do a roll call.
In favor of approving?
This is in favor of approving the non-renewal of the Director of Information Technology. However, if there is money that we provide in unanticipated funds in August, then we would revisit this position.
Okay.
Okay, somebody going to repeat that slower for me. Okay. Renee Cockrell?
No.
Janice DeFrancis?
Yes.
Kimberly Page?
No.
Doug Roth?
No.
Elroy Benson?
Yes.
April Brunel?
Yes.
Larry Cerisi?
Yes.
Passes. Yes, passes.
F5. F5. You did that, Renee?
That's me. I do not know this person. I'm sure they're very well qualified. However, I believe that we should be talking with other neighboring districts about consolidation, so I intend to not support this approval. I hope we do not enter into an hour-long discussion on this, but I just wanted to explain why I will be voting no for this position.
Okay. Doug?
Yeah, I will be voting no for this as well. This should not, in my opinion, have been run through to consent without some form of discussion, whether it's an executive session or in front of the public in general. With the high-profile nature of this position, what this district has been through with this position, I'm not comfortable taking this through consent. I don't think it should have been produced this way.
Anyone else? Okay, Larry?
Just a quick comment again. We're revisiting a discussion and a vote that we've already taken. The former superintendent had brought forward the idea of potentially consolidating this position with neighboring school districts. At that time, I think she put out several letters to neighboring school districts, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was nobody that was interested in working with this district to consolidate this position. And we already had that discussion. We've already taken the vote. So there was several, a recommendation made, several letters sent out. Nobody was interested in consolidating that position. We've taken a vote on the matter, and in the absence of having a plan to consolidate that position with the neighboring district, we are where we are. So I would motion to approve F5.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
Kim? I said yes. Evelyn?
Yes.
5 yes and 2 no.
Okay, hold on.
Doug Roth and Renee Coppola.
Right, okay.
Madam Chair, we can...
Just based on that approval, I would like to recognize Rachel Santa and welcome her to this district as our Director of Pupil Personnel. Working with her as a colleague in South Kingstown and with special education issues, I think we are very fortunate that Rachel has assumed this position, and also, oh great, she'll be here at 9, so we can greet her. But again, we're also very fortunate that she's coming back to North Kingston with her expertise, and we'll talk with her, I hope, when she comes. So, okay, so we are on, believe it or not, F12. Right? That's you. Okay, Renee.
We briefly talked about this a moment ago, but I just wasn't understanding why, when the cuts were proposed, why these additions were not proposed in the prior agenda, because we approved cuts, and now we're approving to add positions back, so I just wasn't sure what the whole picture was here.
The question was that we approved cuts, especially in the food service department, and now there's positions being put back. Is that what this is, or is this people that were in positions that were just filled?
These are positions. When we made the cuts, we reorganized the operation. So these are reallocated positions that people either had to repost for or we had to refill.
So they're not really new positions, it's just a reshuffling? Okay.
Yes,
So they're not net new positions, it's just a reorganization and a reflection of that? Yep.
Okay. So with that, I make a motion to approve F12.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. We have ELA curriculum.
I had exempted that. I believe Dr. Thornton wanted to give a quick Q&A presentation on that matter.
You have a rather large document. I know you all finished your reading over this weekend. The ELA curriculum revised from 6 years back or so. I would hope you could just review it over this next month and have it back in the agenda in August for a formal adoption, just to kind of talk to them about the changes, if I could. A couple thoughts. In the old curriculum from, I believe, 2003, we simply had a list of standards, kindergarten to grade 12, just here they are. We tried to really, look at it differently, and if you look at, I believe, the first page of the introduction that has a sample format. The new format we're trying to follow has a little more to it. On the right column, the GLE or standard, if you will. The middle, it's kind of translated down to just adult and student-friendly English. What does it mean? Kind of make sense of it. And on the right, what assessments are we going to use to get there? And that's, you'll see that all throughout. On the next page, though, there's a new concept that I'll tell you, many schools in the nation are doing this, but in Rhode Island, we're kind of behind a bit. It's called power standards or priority standards. Simply stated, there are a lot of standards out there. Experts say that if you did them all, you're in school from kindergarten to age 22. You can't do them all. You have to make sense, prioritize, pick the ones that matter the most, and hit them hard. So you'll see some of these bolded with the word power standard next to them. For example, in grade 7 English, students must write a 5-paragraph essay well. That's a power standard. You must have that done. Grade 4 math, next year's math conversation. Grade 4 math times tables must be memorized in grade 4. It's a non-negotiable. So certain things must be nailed down, if you will. You'll see that throughout the document. Also, in the back of the document, you'll see some different pieces. In the district historically, we've had, say, 9 high-performing schools, but kind of independent kingdoms as far as how we get places. And an example would be a writing statement or writing process. There are several good writing programs out there. 6 Traits of Writing, Lucy Calkins, there are many of them. Our schools probably have 6 different writing programs and do quite well. Some districts pick one and say, thou shalt do this writing program, and that's it. Having already kind of the horse out of the barn, and we're doing quite well with the 6 different programs, we're not going to really say, you all stop doing that, do this. It's back to the power standards conversation once again. So if you're looking at the back of the document, the page 218, if you wanted to see it, we talk about, once again, by grade level, what are the big things kids must do well in writing, kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2. Regardless of what program you use, what are the big ticket items you have to really nail down. Turn the page, we talk about a statement on spelling. Once again, spelling, we had many different philosophies and programs. Once again, let's get on the same page with spelling. We had that subcommittee. In all, I probably had 42 people working on this for 6 months. You'll see the citation when it goes on the internet. Turn the page again, we talked about, let's see, from several pages, handwriting. Back in the early 1980s, Georgia Tupperwine was a teacher here in North Kingstown. She developed her own handwriting curriculum. And the district adopted, I found out, in 2003, but it really wasn't being followed. And here's a quick story. I had a parent tell me about a complaint. There's a grade 7 student couldn't write cursive. So we had that conversation, and now we're going to really bring forward again the Georgia Tupperwine curriculum. Simply stated, once again, power standards. An example, kindergarten. Kids must write the big A, little a, big B, little b. Grade 1, grade 2, teach the writing. Grade 3, 4, 5, practice the writing and work on cursive. That's going to be stressed again. And you'll see on the next pages there's a rubric for that. The one piece I leave you with in the back is some supporting documents for teachers to use to work better. And the one piece unfinished for next year would be agreeing on a writing rubric. So we have to agree what good looks like across the district. What is a 5 in one district is not a 5 somewhere else, a 4. So you have to lock everyone in the room, essentially, and put samples on the wall and agree that's the best work. That's a 5. Once you do that, you post that work in all the buildings on bulletin boards. Here's a 4, 3, 2, 1. So parents know that's the best. Here's my daughter. She's a 2. That's a 4. I get it. That's what we're getting to. That's probably 4 months of work next fall. That kind of calibration of strike zone, if you will. We haven't done that yet. That's to come in the fall. So you can ask questions now. You can look at it and adopt it in August. Adopt tonight's fine too, but I just want to give you some time to digest it. It's a lot to look at over 3 days. So I wanted to give you a little overview. So,
Questions?
You just, okay. Yeah. Okay. I thank you very much for putting this together. I understand it once was together and it never got formulated, and you pretty much had to start again from scratch in some different areas, and had a great opportunity to talk with a lot of the teachers who worked on this. and it's definitely moving in the right direction. The things that I'm looking at is articulation between elementary and middle school, so that by the time sixth grade teachers get the kids, they already know what they should be doing, and I think this is going to finally happening. And the big also with the writing. I know this has been going on for a long time, and taking off in bites and in pieces, and working on one section at a time is definitely the direction we need to go in. And thank you very much for all you did.
No, go ahead, Melis's next.
No.
I just want to say thank you, Dr. Thornton. You did a thorough job, and there are members in the audience can remember when we did All Schools Went by Georgia Tepperwine's writing. She was an outstanding writing teacher, but I don't know what happened, and I'm glad to hear you
Back there
say...
on the shelf, we found it.
You did find it? And I'm very glad to hear you say that they will know the timetables when they get out of certain grade, and thank you very much. You've done an excellent job.
Larry and Renee.
Dr. Thornton, if I...
He keeps blocking.
Dr.
I
Thornton,
have to rearrange to our regular way.
if I understood you correctly, you're not requesting a vote on this tonight, you just wanted to present...
You could, you don't have to. I realize it's a lot to look at and digest, and if you want to just kind of think about it over the month of July, that's fine.
Okay.
I was actually going to say that this is an excellent job, and because you did it with the collaboration of the teachers, I have every faith that this is just perfect, and I am willing to offer a motion to approve this English curriculum.
Yeah, I'll second.
In favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just, it kind of puts us in a tight spot, Renee.
Supposed to go
The only
through it and
thing-
get to be a part of
The
it.
only thing is that we've always had a process in the past, that we presented a curriculum,
Study.
a person presents it, the public has an opportunity to look at it, and then it comes back to the committee again for a vote. I'm sure it is really good condition. I didn't get a chance to read as much as I wanted to. I believe that it's really important that we follow process here. This would be the only curriculum approved that we didn't follow the process on. And Dr. Thornton says it's no rush. We don't have to vote on this. So I ask you to withdraw your motion.
Well, I did read through it, so I feel comfortable offering the motion, but if the committee does not want to vote on it, then I will certainly withdraw it, but only if it's the full committee that doesn't want to.
Yeah, I was able to read through it, too. I had no problem getting through it. I thought it was very thorough. It's also editable later, right, Dr. Thornton? I mean, if we...
It's always editable.
So we can put it on an agenda, present it, change it, whatever, I mean...
But the last thought, I would just add one more thing if I could.
Let's withdraw it. I'll withdraw my motion, and we'll just have it on the next agenda so that everybody else has the opportunity to read through it.
Thank you very
But
much.
it is a fun piece
It
of work.
is. It's
Interesting
it's an easy
reading.
read.
I just told Larry I would have failed the kindergarten handwriting because it said gripping skills, and
I don't have the
might
gripping
not.
skill either.
It's just amazing the level
And
of
I
detail that has
appreciate
to go into
you
it.
doing that because, we had an opportunity to look at it in the last 3 days, but the public hasn't, so thank you very much.
Just one piece to add, you'll probably see this summer, with the help of Candy, hopefully, all the curriculum will be on the internet. We should be seeing a teaching and learning link on the homepage. Click on it. On the LA curriculum, click, and there it is. But I'll be honest, we had to kind of go back and find a lot of the curriculums. In some cases, Candy has some cases hand-typed them. So this will have electronic. We'll put it in. So it'll all be for public consumption on the internet probably by August, I would hope. It'll be up.
Hey, you're not supposed to say that she typed them. Because I'm
Typed.
dating her.
She did. She had
We need to go back.
Did the data entry.
Okay, so that motion, and Renee?
Oh, there was no motion. I thought we were moving on to J.
Yeah, go ahead.
For J, the supervisor's contracts approval,
I believe we do have to make a motion, though, to move it to another agenda for a vote, don't we? Because it's sitting there to be approved, otherwise it's just sitting there.
Yeah,
We have to do
I'll
something.
motion to move this to the August agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Okay, Renee, on 1,
Jay, for the supervisor's contracts, I'm uncomfortable with the time period. I'm not uncomfortable with the contract because, obviously, if any of these positions were going to be cut, it would be within the next budget year.
Can I just go through, because the public doesn't have this, go through the positions and what the contract year piece is? So what we have here before us in terms of contracts, I'm going to give you that information.
I may not need all of it, Madam Chairman, but I just was looking at supervisors. And whether or not that was plural, whether or not it was singular.
So what we have here, I'm going to explain that. What we have here is we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 positions. And they're divided into groups of contracts with 1 year, 2 year, and 3 year. And let me explain what some of those positions are. In the 1 year contracts that are before us, and I can state these positions. We have the superintendent's office assistant, and we have the food service supervisor is on a 1 year proposed contract. On a 2 year proposed contract, we have the payroll supervisor, we have the transportation supervisor, and we have the buildings and grounds supervisor. On a 3 year contract, we have the administrative assistant to the superintendent, we have the network manager, we have the human resource supervisor, and we also have the controller position. That is what we have before us in terms of contracts.
May I assume, may I assume that at the current time, these employees are employees at will?
Yes.
Policy.
No, they're not at-will employees. They each receive a letter at the beginning of the school year, and the letter is for the entire year. And so that's what they've been going on thus far, is each year they receive another letter.
Okay, I just want, Kim, think about,
Right now, they're not contractual. It's a letter at the beginning of the year where you are employing them for the year that they get.
Correct.
But in the absence of that letter, they are employees at will.
Yes, but I believe they all get the letter.
Right. But right now, if they did not get a letter, they would be employees at will.
But if they get letters,
I still have some comments, if I could.
okay, Renee, go ahead.
My comment on it was that if we're going to offer the contracts, I would request that they all be just 1 year only, not any of the 2 and 3 years, because I think that ties the hands of the budget discussions for the following years, because we're already looking at a $1 million deficit next year, according to Mr. Draper. So if we decide to approve the contracts, then I certainly would request that we consider 1 year only and not 2 and 3.
No?
Did they all get letters for the 88, what are we in, 208? Did they all get letters for 207 and 208?
207 they did.
Last year.
Yes.
Last year?
Yes.
They all got letters.
But not for this year, not for 0809 yet.
Okay, and we're working on 0809?
Yes.
What is wrong with keeping the same practice? Because you're talking here, no matter what you say, you're forming another union. You're forming another bargaining organization. And we are also talking about consolidation. If in consolidation, Jamestown and North Kingstown go together on something, we could be stuck with another suit paying people for not working. We need to clear up one thing at a time.
Dr. Thornton, I believe that Dr. Fear and some of the conversations regarding these positions as to why they were being put on contracts, can you talk a bit about that? What was the
Well, I
reasoning
want to know
behind that?
why, because they've been like that for years.
as far as putting them in contracts?
Yes.
I think the conversation went about the idea of having all the supervisor, director, and principals having the same platform, if you will, same foundation being contracts, just putting them all on the same playing field.
May I ask Dr. Thumb a question? Are you saying she wanted these people to have the same contracts that the principal, and all of them be on the same level?
Identical contract, but have a contract, if you will, have everyone have a contract.
But I'm not sure why. I mean,
Why are
I
we-
didn't understand the why.
What is the reason for it?
I think, thinking back, I was at all these meetings going back, but my understanding of it would be that we have a policy that was revised, GBC, and
GCB, I'm sorry, GCB.
And all of our folks are in that policy, but historically, I think some folks had contracts, some folks didn't have contracts in GBC. So I think this is an attempt to get everyone to have a contract, if I could.
Well, since it's in GBC policy, I would like to ask this question of our attorney. It seems as though we're going to have to ask that GBC policy be revisited or not used if we're giving all these contracts on the faith of the GBC policy. Now, what direction do we go in? Because we can't, I just can't see it making another bargaining unit.
You adopted the GBC policy
Yes.
at the last school committee meeting, and all of the principals' contracts, Mr. Draper's contract, the athletic director's contract were referenced to that policy. State regulations require that principals have a contract, and that's why we went to contracts under that policy. But I want to defer to school committee member Page, if you don't mind, because you were the one that really worked on this policy, and in terms of the contracts for supervisors. If you don't mind, I don't.
Yes, I don't mind talking about it if you want to give me a moment. Basically, when we looked at GCB and we looked at how everything was structured before, it used to be that the supervisors would get a letter, and it was very similar to a contract. There was no bargaining unit that we had to worry about. But the main thing that the policy and the letters had was it had a means that if we did not want to continue to hire someone, we had to go very specific steps. First, it had to be a letter, and then it had to be and various other things. And we said, gee, we don't really like that. We would rather have it be that if at the end of the year we no longer want to employ someone due to budgetary reasons, we can simply say, we're not going to renew your contract. And so when we looked at GCB and putting everyone under that policy so that everybody had the same health benefits, everybody had the retirement according to law, everything like that, we made the recommendation that everybody be given contracts so that we didn't have to go through the same sort of, okay, here's a letter, here's the first time we tell you, here's the second time, here's your appeal process. It was merely much simpler in saying you either get a contract this year or you don't get a contract this year. And so that was why the recommendation was made for everyone. Now, as to why are some people 3-year contracts, some people 2-year contracts, and some people 1-year contracts, I can't speak specifically as to how Priscilla made that, or Dr. Fair made that recommendation. My guess would be that it had something to do that we didn't want everybody's coming up within 1 year and having to look at everyone's. So I can't really speak as to why it was the 1, the 2s, and the 3s, and who got in what category. My guess would be that some of the people who are in the category are people who have been here for a longer period of time. That's my guess.
The 3-year, I believe, in discussion with Dr. Fair was confidentiality issues, and some of that was also part of that whole contractual piece that she talked about within those positions. So I know that came up in the conversation as to the 1, 2, and 3, it's not as clear.
But
Right,
I
yeah.
can speak to the food service, and that's relative to the conversation we had earlier about the outsourcing issue, which is if we do get into the black, it would be our recommendation to keep the position going for multi-year, but until we know that.
Really can't understand you, Mr. Draper, but you made a good point. When I turned my ear, you used the food service. I think you said, and if we were in the back, you would continue that to go.
Correct. And
That's a good
that was the
example
case.
where we should stay year to year.
Well, and I
That's a
know.
very good example.
Sorry. One of the reasons that position was given, was recommended for just a year contract also was that person has only been in the job a year, and so normally if somebody has only been in the job a year, we don't necessarily then skip right to a 3-year contract. Now, there have been exceptions.
Some exceptions.
Right, but normally, that's what was part of the policy as to when you would give an appointment and when you, right, I realize that. But that was the thinking, is that if you were only been here a year, you did not get a 3-year, you got a 1-year.
No.
You're right, Paige, but we're switching the whole thing. We had people sitting right here that didn't want to give him a 3-year contract. He had his credentials. We knew that he was in finance, and I brought that point up. And that's quite different from these things that we are talking about giving 3-year contracts to now. I have a question for the attorney. If I voted on GBL, HID, whatever it is, I'm in the affirmative, I'm going to make a motion, so could we get that information? I know I voted on it, because,
Are you asking if you voted on GCB?
yes.
Let's get,
I don't know, I don't have the
Wait
minutes.
a minute. You've been saying here all night that the person that voted in the affirmative.
Right, no, all right, that's the question, all right, I didn't understand your question. If you voted in the affirmative of GCB, and you want to reconsider that policy, then you can make a motion to reconsider, yes.
Okay, well, I know I voted on all the policies. And if GCB is a driving point for 3-year contract to these,
GCB is not the driving point for a 3-year contract. GCB just consolidates the benefit package of anyone who's not in a union, other than for the superintendent and assistant superintendent. What I said was that the contracts that you approved 2 weeks ago referred to GCB in terms of the benefit packages that people receive. And these contracts tonight, I believe, refer to the same policy for the benefit packages in terms of what you get for vacation, what you get for sick time, what you get for health benefits. But whether you approve a 1-year contract or a 3-year contract has nothing to do with the GCB policy. It's up to what you think you want as a school committee person.
okay, Doug,
glad to hear you say that, because GCB came up as a driving force why we should do this.
Thank you. In talking to the superintendent...
Correct audience.
Point of order, please. Thank you.
Doug's got the floor right now, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, King.
You're welcome. It's all right. It's okay. In talking to the superintendent about the decisions to do the 1 and 3s, I mean, they were arbitrary. She was deciding who got the 1s, 2s, and 3s. That's the take I had from it. And in saying you can look into this and say, hey, there's a policy statement being made that if a position is being offered a 3-year deal, the district's committing to that position within the organization for that period of time. So, for example, like, a principal's contract for 3 years, I didn't necessarily have an issue with, because I think you can make the leap that in 3 years' time, if a school is open, you're going to have a principal in it. So, if that person's doing the job, then a 3-year deal is not that out of the question. Other positions that given the fiscal situation we face, that might need to be thought about over a period of time, receive the 1. So I think if you look at the way she plotted those out, that was the decision-making she was making, as she was trying to build the organizational model going forward. That's something I think we could discuss, the merit on. I know Renee is on her motion, I think that's the frame of reference that I'm taking when I think about that, is that are we committing to these positions, not just the people, but to the positions in the model going forward, and can we afford it?
April.
We're put into a tough situation here. We have contracts that were written by Dr. Fair, and Dr. Fair isn't here. And to what she might have done or why she might have done it. And what one person heard and what another person heard is hearsay. And we don't have Dr. Fair here to tell us why she did this. So I really feel it's irrelevant to try and speculate or guess why she did anything. What we need to do is we need to look at whether or not we agree with what's happening here. I don't want to go on speculation of what she intended to do or what she might have intended to do. And, I wish she was here that I could have asked her these questions, but she's not.
We asked Dr. Thornton because of his...
Right.
I understand the point about wanting the flexibility for all 1 years, but I do agree with the striation of these 1, 2, and 3. And having them all come due in the same year is what I'd recommend. I think it's problematic to have them all come due every year. Have them spread across a continuum.
And that's just the direction we should be going in, is to ask Dr. Thornton what he thinks we should be doing, because it's really hard to speculate what Dr. Fair is doing. I haven't spoke to this issue. My big concern is that we're going into a really tough physical time. And I'm very leery to get involved in any contracts right now where we will not have any opportunity to make changes, to consolidate, to work with other towns, to work with other options, to think outside the box. And I just, at this time, it's no personal reflect on anybody. It's no personal reflection on job performance. It's just that with the financial situations right now, I think we need to be very careful, and we shouldn't be entering into these contracts at all.
Mel?
The thing that I want to understand, and I'm not going to talk long because I know what I'm going to do. These people worked from year to year. What's so urgent about us stacking them? One year and one together. Won't be for that. I haven't seen a single person on this list, their resume, how they are qualified for the job, and you want a 3-year contract? They have been year-to-year contract employees. And as someone said, all the conversations... I'm going to finish, Larry.
Go ahead, Mrs. Benson.
All the conversations Dr. Fair had, she had them with a select group. I would suppose, because she didn't have one with me. And to make major changes like this, I keep telling you all, people elect 7 people, and you stress work together. You can't do it. All of you got this information from the former superintendent, and then you expect us to buy it.
April, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The one most important thing I wanted to say is also the time of us signing this contract. So if you do a 1 year, that means the contract comes up for a decision, but it's after our budget process.
That's correct.
So that, say you give this person a 1 year, but next year you would not be able to work within our budget process if we did have to change something in next year's budget process, right? Am I right?
No, if anything, next year, you'd be able to, you wouldn't have to give them a layoff notice, and we would already have the budget, so they would know even before the contract was up that they would not be having a job, because we would do that through the budget process.
Effective today?
No, the contracts are all effective July 1st.
July 1.
Until the following July 1.
But I'm saying, if we're working on our budget and have to make a decision on our budget in June,
They're budgeted positions already.
Yeah, all these people on the contracts, we have in our budget. So it's not like we are bringing up new positions. These are all people who already we've said in our budgetary process, yes, we want to keep them for next year. So at a minimum, we need to give them something to say you are employed as of July 1st, 2007, or 8, I'm sorry, it was 8.
Okay. All right.
That's what we need to do at a minimum. Now, it's up to the committee to decide as to the length of the contract. But, again, if we don't give these people something And like I said, I think the contract that Mary Ann gave us through the Principals Association, and we have varied it and that sort of thing according to the position, these are all the contracts that we find are far better than the letters that we had before. So it's a matter of, do you want to give them all a 1 year, do you want to give them a 2 year, or do you want to give them a 3 year? But I don't think the question to you tonight should be we give none of them a contract? It's more a matter of how long.
I don't know, there's Larry and then Doug.
Thank you. I think, as April mentioned, it's not a matter of personnel or job performances. We have some great staff here, so that's this discussion or decision shouldn't have any reflection on that. I think the discussion and the decision should be based on policy and budget practices, financial practices. I think some of the comments I made the last time we had this discussion was in offering these contracts, whether it be 1 year or multi-year contracts, what benefit for management is there in offering these contracts? What flexibility does it allow management or the school committee to have when we're locking people into contracts that we're not required to offer? State and local budgets, there are many uncertainties this budget year. I'm sure there'll be many uncertainties next budget year on the state and local levels. I've heard a lot of discussion, good discussion of consolidation. If you're looking to consolidate, whether it be internally, whether it be cross-town with the municipality, or whether it be with other communities, why would you enter into contracts and tie your own hands with your employees when you want to explore those options? You would be limiting your abilities to explore those options. Again, I don't agree with this as a fiscal practice or fiscal policy. Looking at neighboring school districts, the employees that we're looking to offer contracts to, neighboring school districts do not offer contracts to the employees at the same level. If you look at the town side of things within our own town, the town does not offer contract to employees at the levels of supervisors and secretaries and so on and so forth. As a matter of fact, the fire chief or the police chief don't even have contracts.
Correct. Correct.
So I guess I would question why I do support, and we have already voted on this, I support the idea of having contracts for the principals and the vice principals. As our attorney had mentioned, there is a requirement for us, a regulatory requirement for us to offer contracts to them, and I support that, and we have voted in support of that. I support the idea of having contracts for our directors. Obviously, I think our attorney mentioned at our last meeting there's a requirement to fill the position of Director of Administration. We've supported that contract, and I do support the idea of contracts for our directors, our central office directors, special education, business, so on and so forth. But when we start going above and beyond and outside of that to offer contracts to basically everyone in the district who never had contracts before, I question that process and that philosophy. Why, during, I think, in recent history, the state is in a position of its worst economic downturn. Why, during this time, would we be offering contracts to employees who we've never offered contracts to before?
Correct.
Dr. Thornton, may I ask directly, do you support offering these contracts to these folks?
Contract for all these individuals? Yes, I do.
Okay. Couple quick comments. I just want to make sure we know that, the question I asked of Dr. Fear happened in this body in executive session with all members present. When I asked her about the timing of contracts, how many years associated with it, and who was making that decision. So I want to make sure the public understands that that's not a sidebar conversation. We had it with all members present. Also, I just want to caution that we want to be consistent with our hiring practices. I hear selective reasoning across the board. Sometimes it's okay to discuss this set of contracts, whereas other times it's okay to pump one through without seeing credentials, relative to some of the appointments that we made tonight in consent. So I would hope that we move forward consistently and try to understand how this model works moving forward and where it is we want to go, because to me, it's very selective and in the end, problematic. Philosophically would agree with Larry that I think at some point you have to understand which positions you have and which ones rise to the level of a contractual agreement and which positions end up becoming at-will employees. And I think if you put everybody on a contract, it could become problematic. I'm not sure where I fall because I know the people associated with this, but you do need to look forward. Every contract we sign locks our funding down at a time when we don't know how much we're going to get, and our town council is contemplating pulling money from us. So it's problematic at best.
I have one more question.
Dr. DeFrancis, I'm not sure, I just want to direct questions or comments through the chair, but I don't believe we entered into a contract in the consent agenda in tonight's meeting that you alluded to. Is there a contract that we entered into?
We go into a contract with the Director of Pupil Personnel Services.
No. We approved the hiring. We haven't had a contract proposed to us at this point.
That's still a hiring agreement for at least 1 year, right?
I don't know. There hasn't been an agreement presented to us. There's been a recommendation from the superintendent to hire that person. So,
is that on a contract with the...
We have, I believe it's a one-year contract.
Thank you very much. I'll take that as a yes, then.
I believe that's a good question, because what we did, and going back to when we approved that position would fall under the the directors. And so that position is a contract of 1 year.
And we have to approve the contract. We haven't had the contract in front of us yet.
But we approved it tonight to consent.
Approved the position.
But we haven't approved a contract.
Yep.
And that will come before us next.
So, I think my point stands.
Thank you. Okay. Do I do citizens' comments here?
Yeah.
Are we all set? So, do you want to speak?
I've heard most of you speak on this. My recommendation is that you do nothing. I can't recommend anything else. The positions that you talk about have never been under contract. The minute you say contract, whoever occupies these positions will be getting empty number of love letters from shop stewards because it's a contract. There's nothing that's been said here tonight that I know of, even in the past, that says that the person performing the position today will perform any better than they might after getting the contract. Nothing there at all. So there's a couple of things that you need to understand from me, coming out of private industry for a lot of years. And I've heard tonight mention state policy, state law, managing finances, managing budgets. That's all good, but let's find out whether or not it's just rhetoric. You're giving these contracts to people. Giving. They aren't being earned. They're being given with really nothing in return. So I ask you, is it the position or is it the person? And who is being helped by this? The taxpayers? If we have a downturn and someone's on a 3-year contract and you need to eliminate a position, are we on the hook for a year, 2 years of pay? Anybody? Rhetorically? I know you don't enter into conversations with citizens. So let me ask you a couple of things about decision-making, all of you. And I'll give you the analogy. You go into a store, and you're going to buy apples, oranges, and lettuce. Do you pick those that are closest to you? Or do you reach back a little ways or look around the shelf a little ways and try and pick the best ones? Are you giving these positions, contracts, to the best people? Think about it. I have no doubt that some of these people are fine people, but to reward them en masse is a little bit scary from a management point of view. It's already been mentioned about town government. Many people in town government don't hold positions that have contracts. So if we want to do any particular type of in-town consolidation, where are we? We're with apples and oranges. Maybe some are good ones, some bad ones. When picking a spouse, for those of you who are married, you pick the first one after you decide to get married, the first fella or lady that walks down the street? Or are you a little bit selective?
How does divorce fit into that analogy?
We may be coming close to the 3 minutes.
What I'm saying is you're tying the hands of future elected officials in this body and the town council as far as any type of merging that might occur or want to occur. If you are not thinking about the person but thinking about the position, those of you who want to vote in the affirmative, I think you could do the town a favor and re-advertise these positions so that you could get the best apple, the best orange, and the best head of lettuce, or the most productive, highest educated person to hold a position in a very lucrative job market.
All right.
You're giving these people that hold a position something that I guess they probably didn't even ask for. Came out of the blue by Dr. Fear, who is now gone. So we don't know what was on her mind. But if anybody does want to give any gifts to these people that are holding these positions for contracts, be my guest, and please take out your checkbooks and write them a personal gift from your checking account. But if you say your checking account is for your family, I would remind all of you that taxpayers have families as well.
Thank you, Mr.
Think very carefully. It is not a good decision. And you haven't gone through the managerial process of making a decision, at least to my knowledge. And I've made a lot of them over 30 to 40 years. Private industry. And you don't want to be creating new unions. Don't want to be creating new unions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bill.
To adhere to the time.
Mr. McGuinn, this isn't directed at you, this is a general statement. I just want to remind everybody of adherence to the 3-minute time, because we still have quite a bit of agenda left in front of us to get to, so it's just a general statement. Thank you.
My watch says 9:26 and 20 seconds.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that a lot of the conversation is, the points have been well made about consolidation. When this was discussed last time, I was sitting in the back room with a person who's a professional personnel director next to me. And the comment was made, they're confusing terms of employment with performance review and reward. And you don't reward people with contracts. The other thing is, why do you give people contracts? Why are the contracts given to the superintendent? Why do baseball players have contracts? Why do key people in, and I've been under contract in companies, why do you give someone like Dr. Thornton a contract? Because you don't want to lose him, okay? He's a senior individual that you don't want to lose, okay? So you really have to look at that, and again, I've mentioned this a couple times. There's a group, Washington County Consolidation Group, which also includes East Greenwich. Most of the employees in other districts do not, of this level, and remember, we're not talking teachers here. We're not talking support staff who are under contract. We're not talking about principals who should have had contracts for a long time and didn't. We are talking about office staff. People in the town do not. The only person in the town government who's got a contract is the town manager. In other schools, Mr. Draper's position is required, but his position in other districts is not under contract. And we have to understand that. You're looking at, as Mrs. Cochran said, another $1.1 million, I think was the estimate for next year.
Right now.
Right now, okay? It could get worse, and there could be, I think at the last meeting, Mrs. Benson mentioned, there's those supplementals like they did this year in the third quarter, about January, February, the state said, there's not enough money in the till, so we're going to cut the budget. I also, and it's been brought up, before you give someone a contract, look at what their job description is, and look at what their qualifications are. You gave a contract to someone last time that did not have the qualifications specified, requirement specified in the job description. And I did review that with the Rhode Island Department of Ed attorney, and it's very specific. It says a Rhode Island teaching certificate, and the person doesn't have it. So, there's a lot of reasons not to do this, and you haven't given yourselves nor the public any justification why you have to change and you have to do it now. And I think this term of financial irresponsibility, I keep on seeing it in the paper, okay? If you give contracts, it is the epitome of financial irresponsibility at this point. Thank you.
I'll try not to be redundant, but let me just approach this from a couple of different angles. I mean, it seems to be something endemic to the education industry that everybody wants to hand out a contract to every employee, put everybody under contract. Mrs. Carroll and Mrs. Page, as lawyers, can tell you that personal service contracts are indeed a one-way street. You can give this person a 3-year contract, and the day after they can walk in and say, I got a better job down the street. On the other hand, when you're into the contract, if you feel the need to eliminate that position, you end up buying them out. I look at the list of people that are positions, I should say, that you're proposing 2- and 3-year contracts for. Payroll supervisor, transportation supervisor, building and grounds supervisor, HR supervisor, controller, and network manager. All seem to me to be candidates for consolidation with other school districts, if that should happen. Yet you're going to vote on whether or not to tie the hands of this committee and the next committee and the next committee so that they can't eliminate those jobs without a buyout. I look at the one-year contract. If this says the agenda item is supervisor's contract, the superintendent's office assistant, how many people does he or she supervise? I look at network manager. When I looked at the organization chart for the IT department, there was a network manager and an assistant, so maybe that person supervises his or her assistant. But I just don't get it. I don't understand why this rush to change what has been a perfectly acceptable practice of giving one-year letters of employment and enter into multi-year contracts and tie your hands. I just don't get it. Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we approve the supervisor's contract and hearing the consensus of the committee for a one-year contract for each one of these.
Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion, sure.
And I have one thing to say. I think that part of this that we're going on is some of the analogies that have been made here is that we brought forth bad people to give contracts to. By saying this is, have we gotten the best? Have we going to? And I resent that a little bit in that many of the people who we are giving these contracts have been here a long time. They have done a great job. And this is not a reward, this is not a gift, but this is saying to them, we'd like to keep you on for another year. We've budgeted for you, you've done a good job in the past, and my motion reflects that we would be giving them a one-year contract. I don't think that that's too much to ask of these people, to say that you have job security for the next year. It's something we've done in the past, and that we've given them a one-year letter, so it's no more than we've done before. But I do kind of want to say that I don't think that we'd be giving any of these people a contract if we did not think that they have done a good job in the past.
Mary Ann, I have a question regarding the way that, maybe just semantics, but it does say supervisors' contracts, and we do have people in that grouping that are not supervisors.
Correct.
Is that problematic?
Yes.
Okay.
Explain.
We voted tonight, it's on the agenda to approve supervisors' contracts. If you have people on there who are not supervisors, basically you're not following the agenda. But I think that's because at the last meeting, we were approving everybody, and I think this was just the ones that were not approved last week.
Because we have a network manager, superintendent office assistant, controller. Those are 3 positions that don't have supervisory, and also administrative assistant to the superintendent. Those are the 4. Kim?
Well, the reason that they're all under the heading of supervisor is because when we had the former policy of GCB 3, all these people were covered by that and were in the supervisor's policy. And so that's why they're given that designation. It wasn't necessarily as to how many people they had. It signifies the former category that they were in, and now they're all under GCB.
Can I also mention that in the paper, just to be cautious, in the newspaper agenda that went out for the North Kingston School Committee that we had published in the newspaper so we could change it, it says supervisors, contract, singular. That's how we posted it. We didn't post for 7. We posted for a supervisor's contract.
Apostrophe S?
Yeah.
Takes care of that discussion.
Larry? Oh, that's how it's on this agenda.
There's only one. Well, I guess it...
I did have some additional comments.
layers.
I
I think in abundance of caution, this gets put on the August agenda.
Okay, I'll save my additional comments.
Okay, so do we have to motion that we just table this to August?
Table it to August.
Table it to August.
Withdrawn or...
You're right, they got to withdraw their motion.
You withdraw that, Kim?
No, I'd like to take a vote on the motion. I see other times where we've had this on before, and we've had this up. I can't believe that we would really be going against the open meetings law by saying the supervisor's contract approval when we had them already last time.
I think, can I be recognized?
Again, we have discussed them last time. This has been coming up over and over. But it is a controversial item on tonight's agenda, as we can see, and in abundance of caution, I don't think it makes any difference whether we approve them tonight or in August, because these people aren't going to lose their jobs. They're still going to come to work tomorrow. They're still going to come to work on July 1st. I suggest that any vote on a contract or whatever is held till August.
Larry, then April, too.
I can echo some of Kim's concerns. I think it is a very tight interpretation of the OMA, but I think, as Ms. Carroll has said, an abundance of caution, considering the history that the school district has had with the Attorney General's office and OMA violations. I'm personally not comfortable voting on something that our attorney is sitting here telling us not to vote on because you're running the risk of an OMA violation. So.
Correct.
April?
I was just going to say, I have to go with legal advice on this one.
And I'm definitely going with legal advice because I pay tax and I might be the one that file it.
Doug?
Thanks. I mean, if this is willing committee to wait, I guess then we wait. That's what we want to do. I disagree completely with the interpretation of the OMA on this one. Supervisor contract, supervisor's contract, that can be interpreted clearly. I don't want to get into reading comprehension, but that can very clearly be a plurality there. So you're cutting it very close. I just want to say, if that's where we want to go out, an abundance of caution, that's great. But you know what? Let's decide that collectively and not reactively keep doing things like this. This could be considered. And believe me, I spent a lot of time in the last 18 to 19 months looking at OMA issues, as every one of them have come before us.
Right, so
this one would not pass muster.
So the decision here is, do we have some consensus as to whether or not we're going to hold that motion?
Well, last time we had on the principal's contract, and we just had an apostrophe S, and we also had on the director's contracts, meaning apostrophe S, and there wasn't this issue then, so I guess I'm just kind of, I don't really think there's a real issue. I think we can vote on it today, it's on the agenda, so.
Renee?
Because we do live in a litigious society here, I'm going to go with the abundance of caution, but I want to confirm, so that these people aren't concerned, they have a job. Without a letter, without a contract.
They have a job, they're coming to work tomorrow, they're coming to work July 1st, they're coming to work August 1st. I mean, we haven't done anything to lay them off or not reappoint them. They have a position. So whether you approve it tonight or in August isn't going to matter at this point. And I have to agree, I mean, we're being very particular because of the apostrophe S, and I kind of agree with what school committee person Page says, but it's a little concerning, it is controversial, and it's not an agenda item that matters. We can do it in August.
But to follow up, Ms. Benson has just said that she might file the lawsuit against us, and we've already had this once, so I would ask that please be reflected in the minutes that's why we're being very cautious, because Ms. Benson has stated that she might file a lawsuit.
We're suing ourselves.
Okay, so then we're
We
going to
just
leave that
make
off the table.
I'm going to make it
Put
clear.
that back on
Madam
the
Chair, I'm
I'm going to make it clear.
I'm going to withdraw my second at this
Thank
time.
you.
I'm going to make it clear. We have an open
That's
meeting
all.
law,
August.
and it's not suing us. It's following state general laws. And if we do not use it, I'll fill out an
All right,
application.
so that is being tabled to the August meeting. So now we will move on.
That's going to make me feel guilty, because we didn't do nothing right.
We're going to move on to unfinished business, and then I believe if we can get through this process, we need to get to new business.
Do we have a break, Dr. Kraft?
What?
Do we have a break?
Yes,
That's what I wanted.
Please, a 2-minute break, please.
I can't even get up to full speed.
I'm sure you need a break. Oh, my hand is sore. How did I get to
Okay. Before we start on this other unfinished business, I'd like to acknowledge Rachel Santos, our new Director of Pupil Personnel, and welcome her to the district. No, you don't have a contract, but you did get appointed. So welcome. We're very happy to have you. I think we've met. Nice to meet you. Thanks.
Don't take my extension on your position, anything but you personally.
Hi, sweetheart. We've met once before.
Yeah, are you related to Santos that used to work there?
Our last name is Santa. And hi, Rachel. Nice to see you. Rachel, congratulations, and we're very happy to have you join us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your contract discussion, I guess that's in August.
That's old.
Rachel, your contract will be in August. Oh, it's in the mail? Yeah. But welcome. Okay, we have unfinished business, but, yes.
If there are no objections from the committee, I would request that, I know we may have some people in the audience that wanted to speak to the renaming of Knesset Elementary School agenda item, and they've been patiently waiting all evening. So if there's no objection from the committee, I would request that we move that item up on the agenda and address it at this point.
So moved.
V, new business. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Yep.
5-1.
All right, so B1, the renaming of Knesset Elementary School.
Yeah, I guess I'll take the floor first with it. This item came to the agenda at the request of the folks from Quinnesset, hoping that the school committee would address it, talk to it, move through the issue to one way or another. I don't know whether the committee wants to make a motion or whatever it is. I'm hoping for, in the spirit of where we've done things in the past, to have a dialogue about the issue and talk about where this goes and how we handle these issues moving forward.
Okay, I believe at one point we had, Mary Ann, 3 different interpretations of the who could name.
Right, I understand, I realized at the last school committee meeting, after you had asked me to research it, that you had received a recommendation from the town solicitor. You had received a letter from the previous school committee attorney, Mr. Robinson, and then you received my interpretation. I based my interpretation on Rhode Island State statute, which stated that the naming of any project, any town building, even those that come under the supervision of a school committee, are the prerogative of the town council. And that's how I based my opinion. Mr. Robinson based his on the roles and responsibilities of the school committee, and then I believe he referred to either an Ohio or a Pennsylvania case, and he never addressed the statute that is in Rhode Island general laws that states that the naming of any project, even those under the control of the school committee, are the responsibility of the town council. So that's how I base mine. So I can't speak to Mr. Robinson's, I can't speak to Mr. Riley's, I can only speak to the fact that I did find a state statute that says that the towns have that responsibility.
Larry? No, Larry.
Thank you. I think just to address some of the questions, concerns, comments that were made earlier this evening by, I don't know her name, the woman that spoke from the public, regarding this agenda item. To a degree, I agree with her statements and her position. I think when this process started out, or lack of process started out, I think the town council recognized the perception of a lack of process in renaming a building after they voted on it. And I think, much to their credit, they put the item on another agenda. They discussed it again. The public participated in the discussion. I think at that point, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that they looked for a legal opinion from the solicitor's office, and I think that they directed the solicitor's office and the town manager to work on a policy or procedure to put in place for the town to address the renaming of buildings. And then I believe once that process was completed, they had another meeting, public meeting, and discussed the issue again for a third time in a public meeting, discussed the process and discussed the pros and cons of the prior process and the new process going forward, and they voted unanimously to I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Not back. Okay.
They voted unanimously to confirm their prior vote, their original vote. So I think yes, I think there was some questions, concerns raised with the initial process. I think the town council recognized that, and I think they went back and addressed those questions and concerns that were raised about the process, and put a process in place moving forward. And just to refer to the legal opinion that we received from Mary Ann Carroll, basically, correct me if I'm wrong, but as you said, the council holds the legal authority on the state statute to name buildings. And basically, at this point, the school committee or school district has no authority, and there's no action for the school committee to take official action. However, at this point, I think in a symbolic gesture, I would offer a motion to the committee to confirm and recognize the vote that the town council made to rename Quinnesset Elementary School to the Susan M. Hensler Quinnesset Elementary School.
I'll second that.
I think the motion is very important. I think we have, and I know having dealt with the parents over all this time, that this is an important step. And this is what I've always said, is that this is open interpretation. Mary Ann, you gave an opinion, it's pretty clear. Stephen Robinson gave an opinion, it's pretty clear. These types of conflicting opinions get settled someplace if people have a grievance, and that'd be court. And I think an action taken by the school committee in this case would nullify that. And I think in talking to these parents, they want closure to it more so than anything. So I think the motion is a good one, and I support the motion of the motion. 45-2, 45-216 says this pretty clearly. Every city or town has the exclusive right, power, authority to name any and all city or town sponsored projects, including but not limited to buildings, bridges, edifices, and any other construction or erection sponsored by the town or city. But it also says, including all projects constructed or erected pursuant to authority, not limited to, extended to municipal committees of city or town government, including, but not limited to, school committees or housing authorities. Each city and town may select committees through their representative councils for the purpose of determining the name to be selected. State law is very clear that they open the door, that it's suggesting that this needs to be a collaborative process, and it should have involved the school committee in the naming of the process. I will say that my personal feeling on it is that this has never been a building that I arbitrarily could rename. I've always felt that this is the community's, and if people raise an objection, they needed to be heard. I don't think they were heard as well as they needed to be. To me, this has never been about the honor. I've talked to Mr. Hensler. He knows how I felt about Sue. This is about the process that was engaged here, and I can't say that I think the council handled this very well. I hope going forward that we do initiate a process where we've got a policy in place, that we consider it, that the town council takes that policy into consideration, and that we move forward collaboratively. We've talked a lot about town and school collaboration. There was nothing collaborative about this. I can tell you that I was told originally that the school committee was going to be asked to consider this question. It was then voted on directly by the town council. That's how this process started with me.
May I ask?
Town council president Cooney. Yeah. So this is how these processes started. It's been kind of arbitrary. I think the honor ultimately is out of the community's right place in our collective heart but that this process was handled horribly, and that if we don't think about how we do this down the road, we just we'll continue to go down this divisive path. That's all I have to say.
Back to when I mentioned it, and you said it would come up later in the meeting. When there's a state statute, and it plainly says that, and the council did their duty, I don't know why we've had to talk about it this much. And to sit here and say, I've talked with Mr. Hensler, I know how he feels. I feel dirty when I go home after we sit here and talk about that. A woman who cannot defend herself, and we sit here and argue about, talk about process for a building. And I tell you another thing. If we had accepted, and some of us had been in collaboration with the people out there, and not only us, administrators too, it wouldn't have been nothing. We had named Zeke Harris's Park, you never heard a word. Wilson Park, you never heard a word. We've named other things in this town. And I'm ashamed to sit here because God knows what you'll say if I die. I don't want you to name nothing. And we're going to be that strict, and yet we couldn't pay attention to somebody taking our money, using it otherwise. Wake up, folks.
The town council policy that they've come up with, does that include the school committee for future?
Town council can't make no policy, general structure.
They did make a new policy because I
They
believe
passed
it doesn't.
a resolution in 1986 granting themselves the right to do
I'm talking
that.
about something new. There is a new policy the town council has passed about something because they sent it to us on the policy subcommittee. That's what I'm inquiring about. Are you aware of that, Ms. Page? I'm just asking if we would be included in the process.
Yes, this is something that, when this all came down, I mean, I was one of the people who said that we need a process. We need something where we involve parents, where we involve the school. I mean, if it's a school building, it would have been nice if we could have gotten together as a town and had a discussion before we just started going forward. That didn't happen, and so there was a policy that was written by the town, and we on the policy committee asked the town if we could have their policy because we wanted to write something. And actually, we did write up a policy, and we completed that policy in April. However, it's not come towards the full school committee for a vote. And I had hoped that Karen would put it into your packets, not for a vote, but at least to have a discussion so that you could see what the thoughts were if that was how we wanted to continue to go with the policy. Because it's a sort of thing of it always makes it an easier task when you're changing something if you involve everybody who's there. I mean, that's not saying that anything against anybody who this building is being proposed named after, but it helps if the people at Quinnesset would have understood as to why and what was going on, rather than the way that everything was done.
I attended the town council meetings and saw the discussions go back and forth, and I really believe that the council, in good faith, listened to the community. We had Republicans and Democrats standing there together, agreeing on something that was very important. And when they saw that the community didn't like the process, they took an extra step. They had extra meetings. And I'm sorry, the people were heard. They didn't sit there with their hands over their ears. They really listened to them. They really cared about all of this, and they wanted to make it a glorious situation, not a fighting situation. I mean, we should be really celebrating this moment. And so I really believe that as elected officials, I listened to the people, and I heard what they were saying. And then I listened to the lawyer, and I took legal advice. As I am not a lawyer, nor will I ever pretend that I know all the laws better than any of these lawyers. So I just really want to move forward and be really positive about this and really share with the community, and especially, the young woman who was here tonight. You could tell she was still very upset. She was still shaking. Her hands were shaking. And I want her to know that she has been heard. She's come forward. She's spoken eloquently. And I've always supported people coming to the mic. And I really appreciate it when we have citizens who come to the mic And that's why I wanted to have, at the beginning of all our meetings, citizens comment, because they can't wait till 10 o'clock at night for the agenda to come up. She couldn't wait for this, so she had opportunity to speak at citizens' comments. So I think we're really moving in a good direction here with a lot of different facets here. Let's just start, moving forward, and let's celebrate and go in the right direction.
Doug?
April brings up a good point about precedent, and we need to be thinking about how these things happen in the future. You need a process, because you did have a situation where, and you know what, you would like to have it be unanimous and that it would have been easy, but no one could predict, or no one could influence certain behavior coming from that school. And if you look at the numbers of people that were associated with this change, you had members of a town political group that numbered maybe 40, 50, motion and produce a decision that the town council went with as a member group of 5, and then you had a school community that signed a petition that numbered up in the 70s that had a problem with it. So you can look at this and say, how is the community spoken? I still don't know. What I still look at, I'm sorry, one moment. What I still haven't seen yet is how you truly have arrived at a truly representative process where people could gain consensus to get where we needed to go. I think moving forward, that's what we should be moving to.
Point of order.
No. Just a minute. No.
So.
Point of order is.
Did you mean not interrupting me?
Excuse me,
Is that
Doug.
okay?
Doug, just a minute.
Everybody's
Doug.
speech making, Mr. Prada.
Doug, excuse me for a minute.
So I'd like to finish my point, Madam Chair.
I have a point of order. I'll let you finish a little bit. Let me hear the point of order. Mel, what is the point of order? Mel,
Hi. My point of order is he's straying away from the subject, bringing in all of these other things. We have received the law, and state statute takes the place. I was at the council, and to make you feel sure, it was Mr. McCullough, since you want to make everything political, who made the motion.
let's get back to if this is about process and this is about the issue, let's try to get back to it if we can possibly do that without bringing in politics or name calling.
I'm trying to. I'm just trying to describe the process that happened.
As we go forward, what are you proposing that we should look at here?
Well, we have a motion on the table. I think that we should be looking very seriously at a policy that, you know what, you can look around the country, communities around the country. Point of order, please.
Hey, no, please, let's listen to
Communities around the country have gone through this, and they've developed policies that combine both groups, that take the time to name their public buildings. That's what we should be moving to.
Well, we're having a joint meeting with the town council and the school committee. Perhaps we can also put that on the agenda also as an issue of discussion.
Can there be one long agenda?
Because that was, we really would be able to have that discussion because they're not here to have that collaborative discussion. So I would suggest that if that's the place that we want to go forward with and make that a process that we can collaborate with the town council, that would be something that we can discuss with them.
And what we're going to do about general law.
Well, wait, I'm just saying that the general law stays in the general law, but that's, I mean...
And the general law governs what? The state of Rhode Island. Let's quit playing with this. The general laws govern the state of Rhode Island.
What's the motion on the floor here? Let's go back to the motion.
We'll get a group and go up and say we don't want to pay state income tax next.
Okay, let's see.
Let's
go do that. Give me a minute here.
All of this is foolish.
Motion to confirm and recognize the renaming to Susan M. Hensler Elementary School.
Okay.
Can you say that one more time? I couldn't hear that. She got to be clear.
Rachel Santos, okay, to a dialogue.
Larry made it.
Do I look any different?
Larry,
Yes.
could you restate the motion?
Hold on a second. She has it. Here it is.
Hold on.
Read it.
Motion
Hold
to
on.
confirm and recognize the renaming of Quidnesset Elementary to Susan M. Hensler Elementary School.
And Suzanne and April seconded it.
Okay, before we do a vote, I'm going to allow citizens' comments.
Jim McGuinn. I have to...
Want me?
No,
I'm trying to get Mel's attention.
I'm
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have to agree with Mrs. Brunel. This should be a celebration of someone's life and contribution. This should be a very positive thing. And over the past, and it's been about a year, and to look back at the timing of events, there was a meeting of a group in North Kingston. I believe it was the Democratic Party. Wasn't there, but they made a recommendation. And there was a newspaper article in July of last year, quoting one of the school committee members that's here now, saying that they were for it. Then there was a note in early August on the listserv of the school, asking parents for their feedback. There were meetings of the school committee. There was no mention at school committees that this needed to be discussed. And then I was surprised when I went to a town council meeting and hadn't looked at the agenda, and it was on the agenda. But my point was, there was plenty of time for the school committee to take action on this. And it wasn't put on the agenda. There's a lot of things that don't show up on the agenda that people ask for. I'm reminded by, I looked at the Federal Register today of the U.S. Congress and U.S. Senate. In 2000, a fifth grader won a national essay contest, first place, from Quinnesset Elementary. And the major points of the essay were, people have to follow the rules, people have to work together, people have to be considerate of one another. And I really think that that's really what we've got to get back to. This back and forth with the town council is getting you nowhere. And the town council just picked up the COPS program for next year. And we might not have cops in the schools if they hadn't done that. So this back and forth gets this community nowhere. It's very divisive. This issue has taken almost a year, 11 months. The whistleblower is 23 months. My recommendation to the school committee is you need to start moving these issues along quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
You are the school committee. You are responsible for the education of 4,500 children in this system. What's on the outside of a wall on a building does not affect what goes on inside the building. China, India, and tens of other highly developed countries are eating our lunch in the United States because of our education system. And you all are the school committee, and you're discussing for hours, endlessly, the name on the outside of a school. Please understand your responsibilities and move on.
Thank you.
Okay, we have I almost had it.
Chris Pryor, 135 Windsor Avenue. I feel like I have to make a comment to this issue because I have been involved as an advocate and a watchdog, if you will, in politics for a number of years now, and including before Mrs. Hensler came from the state level and ran for local office. And when she came to run for a local office, I didn't support her initially, and my support went to others that were running. Nevertheless, she won by a large margin and took a seat on our town council, and I had the wonderful experience of finding out that I was wrong in not supporting her. She was an individual who was a teacher and a welcoming person, and even though I was a watchdog and critical of town government in many, many ways, she welcomed me actually into her house and never failed to take a phone call from me or be forthright with me as a watchdog, and some would say, call me a troublemaker. Nevertheless, she never saw it that way. She saw an opportunity to dialogue with me at every opportunity, and on at least one occasion put specific suggestion on my part into action as she sat on our town council. So it wasn't just giving me lip service. It was actually somebody caring about a member of the community who was involved, whether or not she was in opposition, recognizing that I was a part of that process. So I do believe that this, despite the sideshow initiated against this renaming of the school, which is tragic, I still see the larger story here is a celebration of a wonderful and an incredibly brave person who just weeks before she passed away, I was with her at functions and at the town council, and she had a high spirit and a positive attitude, and was somebody who was at peace with everybody, and especially herself. And I found that very refreshing. And I don't know if I'm saying this very well, but I really enjoyed my interaction with her as a public servant, and I learned from a place of not knowing what she was all about to come to a place of great respect. And whether or not the process of renaming this school was perfect, I think that renaming it after her is in fact perfect, considering who she was. Thank you.
We have a second.
This person.
Sure.
Good evening. I'm Edna O'Neill Mattson, and a 30-year friend of Suzanne Hensler. I met Sue in the early 70s when she moved to this town, and she embraced it. She embraced this town. She worked hard and long. From her first appointment on the school committee, which I was instrumental in providing for her, she took the bull by the horns and did everything that she could to improve education in this town. And then when the incinerator was coming in, she was ready to lay down and not let the trucks go in there. She did more for this town. She brought more money into this community. She was such an advocate for North Kingstown. Truly loved the students, the spirit, and Quonset Elementary School. Let me tell you, there is no one more deserving of having a building named after them than Suzanne Hensler. Believe me, you will long be happy that you did this, because she truly is in heaven looking down tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So we have a vote, motion on the...
Motion to confirm.
Second. To, could you state it one more
To
time?
recognize the renaming of Quonset to the Suzanne M. Hensler Elementary School.
All those in favor?
Roll call vote.
Roll call. Could you do that, Evelyn, please?
Okay. Kimberly Page? Oh, I didn't know I'd be first. Well, I think we have to confirm the vote because I think it is fully up to the town council, so.
Yes.
I think you have to, yes. Douglas Roth?
I'm going to abstain from the vote.
Melvoin Benson?
Yes.
April Brunel?
Yes.
Larry Cerisi?
Yes.
Renee Cockrell?
Yes.
Janice DeFrancis?
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hensler. Okay, we are getting to... We're getting to policy. What is it, Larry?
Thank you, Dr. DeFrancis. I just, Kim is the chair of the policy subcommittee, so I think she should obviously direct this discussion, but just a suggestion to throw it out there, Kim, and it's up to you. You know, there's people in the audience that have been patiently waiting for the whistleblower policy, and probably very important that we get to that this evening before we adjourn, or else I think we're in deep trouble.
Just make a motion to move it to the front.
So well, I'm just making it a suggestion.
We can put up the whistleblower first at GBKA.
Right, you have before you GBKA. As you remember, we passed this policy well over a year ago, and then we sent it off to the audit committee to ask them for their input. They came back to us in April with their input, and then they said, no, don't pass it yet. And they've come back to us, and at our last meeting on June 15th, we met with them again. And one of the things we don't want to do in policy is we don't need to rewrite the law in policy. And thus, after talking with with Mr. August and Julia Techington, we stated that all we really need to do is affirm that we will uphold the North Kingstown ordinance that is the whistleblower. We do not have to write everything into our policy that is in the law. And so that is the reason that you see GBKA in the form it is today, that we merely affirm the ordinance that the town council has made. So I would make a motion that we pass GBKA.
Second. Any discussion?
One quick question.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Very quick question for Mr. August. You've read this, and are you in support of this?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You all right?
That was my question.
Yeah, Larry.
Before we go, I just want to make one quick comment and put me on the 20-second timer. I know a lot of time and a lot of effort and hard work went into this by Kim and the policy subcommittee, the town audit committee, our attorney, the town solicitor, so there was a lot of people that really, Julia Techington, a lot of people really put a lot of time and effort and collaborated and finally getting this together for a final vote, and I just wanted to thank Kim and Mr. August, who's here this evening, and all the others who participated in getting this very important policy together.
Doug.
Yeah, I'd reiterate that, too. I know that a lot of times you have people coming to the microphone saying that the school committee wasn't compliant on this issue. I think we moved as quickly as we could, and I think the collective bodies that Larry just mentioned did this probably as fast as we possibly could. Dick, I mean, you do agree with that? So I think we ended up in a good spot, and I think you should be congratulated for the work and the effort that you put in, as always. So
Can we vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Policy passes. You can go on vacation now. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's get to it. We've got three more policies.
Next month we'll learn.
All our policies here this evening are actually pretty easy.
We have three more policies, and we have a...
If you look next at the GCB 1, this is merely a change in the numbering. It used to be GCB .4. We're now changed to 1. And this is also keeping in line with the GCB policy that we passed before. We put in a purpose and a philosophy statement. We made sure that we put in the same sort of, we cleaned up some of the, on page 5, you'll see that we cleaned up some of the grammar. Instead of writing 6.5, we wrote out SIX and that sort of thing. We made sure that we have the family illness and the bereavement leave the same as everyone else. And, of course, we changed the travel and mileage policy. So there isn't, like I said, this just brings us in line with everything else. So unless there are further questions, I would make a motion that we pass GCB 1.
Second.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you. Okay, the next one we have is the KDCA, the use of students in distributing information. As our policy committee we have actually updated many, many policies, except for we are mindful of the agenda and not putting them all on at once. So this is the next one that we thought was important. Well, I don't know. Anyway, for getting ready for the fall. Again, we added a purpose and a philosophy statement. We said that basically the superintendent of schools is the one who makes the judgment on what items are to be distributed. This really is not anything different than what we had before. It's merely the purpose and philosophy statement.
April?
I'm really comfortable with this policy, except for one thing. Kim, I was wondering if we could define political. I think it's just a little bit too vague. Because some people say, you know, you have a political action, or this is political, but are you saying that it's Democrat, Republican? I mean, it's just too vague for me. I was wondering if you could define it.
Well, if you look at here, what this says is that the distribution of flyers and circulars shall be strictly controlled by the superintendent of schools. And the superintendent may permit distribution if, in her judgment, the content is not political, religious in nature, controversial. I mean, so it's the sort of thing, it gives her a judgment call that if she thinks something is looking very strictly like Republican Democrat, she can say, no, that's not for school situations.
But we had situations like the closing of Whitford Elementary, and the town council stepped in and ended up making a ruling about what could go out in the knapsacks. So I really think that in this environment, we have to define political. I mean, obviously, the closing of Whitford Elementary, the topic was not a political one, and it wasn't religious in nature. Was it controversial? But still, they controlled what we put in the knapsacks about the closing of Whitford L. I just want to be really clear on what's considered political.
What are you proposing we put on that paper?
I'll answer your question.
I just don't want to leave it vague for a superintendent to make that.
Well, I would hope that our superintendent would consult with the attorney, and so that would, help to define it more, because I think if we define it more, we will get ourselves into trouble, versus if we leave it just as political, with the thought that hopefully the superintendent or the interim superintendent will be consulting the attorney, that can alleviate a lot of what we had from before.
No.
I'm thinking about a situation before I was on the school committee that happened. I think it was Davisville Middle School, and the parents were very, very upset about that situation. And I might have thought that it was okay. It was sending something home in the pack. And I think that's too much responsibility in view of the light that we've had with superintendents, to give them the sole authority to do that in consulting with the chairman of the committee. And I think we all respect whomever we elect the chairman, that if the superintendent calls you and say, this and this has to go home, at least it's not left solo. Because without luck and the things that's been happening, I'm like April on political, and I cannot leave it to one person to make a decision. I think superintendent with the consultant of the chairman of the school committee.
Just one thought. No matter how you write a document, there's always room for interpretations. I think you really have to trust the person in the chair that he or she will make a reasonable determination. Mm-hmm. But I'm happy to confer, but I don't know or think that the chair might want to have me call her every time there's a publication, nor would it be maybe even her role to have me call her every time. Numerous times these things go home. So I'm not sure if that is the intent of this.
May I answer his question? You said the one word that opened the light. We trust. So we leave it, I trust. And the town trusts you. So we'll leave it with you. We have had situations where you couldn't trust the people to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's just in general, it's subjectivity, right? You got to use your judgment. I trust your judgment, and if you think something's needs to be considered by others, I'm sure you'll bring them in, right? So it's at some point we have to trust you, and that's my feeling on it.
That was what I was saying. It was the individual. I said, we trust you. There were those that we couldn't trust to make a decision for that.
All right. Just one other thing to point out, that this is a letter change, just again to keep in conforming with national school board policy. So I would make a motion that we pass KDCA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah, I oppose.
Okay, the next one is GBEBCR.
Do that again.
It's the administrative regulation, gifts to solicitation by staff. Now, I put on everybody's chair, and I'll make sure I pass this down to you for note-taking, as to the revised policy I put out. The one change that is on here from what went out in our packets is on page 2, number 2A. Instead of saying only, in the second sentence, instead of saying only school supplies may be sold in the school store. It says school supplies. And the reason the only was taken out, because it does give the principal of the school a little bit of leeway, and then I know some of the school stores, when they have specialty times at the end of the year near Christmas, they don't sell only school supplies. So it lets it be in the principal's discretion as to what they consider school supplies, and that can be more loosely termed. Again, this is an updating of an old policy. It is, we realized we didn't need the philosophy statement in here. Some of the language has been changed. But this also goes hand in hand with our whistleblower policy in kind of firming up as to what exactly is allowed to be a gift and what would be considered too much. And so it was one of those things, we really wanted to bring it up at the same time as we brought up the whistleblower policy, so people understood, meaning people in our district, teachers, staff, administrators, as to what would be an appropriate gift and what would not be an appropriate gift. So,
Move to pass GBEBCR.
I'll second that.
Okay. I was thinking there was already a motion, but that was from the other.
It was out
It's getting late.
If we have a second, do you have anything now?
I just had a question to ask, and it's directed at our attorney. The laws in the state concerning gifts, does that apply to school committees and so forth? About the price you can give them?
Are you talking about the laws that apply to when we were elected people about accepting gifts?
Anyone accepting gifts, you know?
It applied to anybody that was an elected official.
Okay.
But
And Kim, does yours apply to the school committee or the whole school department?
It applies to the teachers, the administration.
Teachers, administration?
And staff, right. This is not meant to meant to override any state law. None of our policies could override state law.
That's what I said earlier.
Okay.
But one thing I would like to add, in school stores, they have the tendency to way overprice things. You know, I can't see a yearbook costing nearly $50. And kids really are affected by not being able to buy certain things in schools and so forth.
Well, this is more about them giving you the $50 notebook.
Oh, you said sell in school store. That's what we're talking about, what can be sold in a school store. Isn't that what we're talking on?
Yes. It is one of the things that is in this policy that was in it before. But I don't believe that the two prices I paid for yearbooks in this last year have not been 50. I paid 13.
You didn't buy one in high school?
Right, I did not.
High school, they are. So what does that do?
Some things we can do something about, you know, like they charge you 10 cents at the, used to charge you 20 cents at the ATI for a 15-cent stamp. We got to make sure that some little things are not overpriced.
Is that a problem with that?
No, that is not a problem because it does not give a designated amount for how much something can be sold for.
Okay, all right, so we have a second on this policy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. What?
No, I just wanted to say I'm going to abstain. I wasn't here for the discussion, so.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain,
Same.
because we need tighter controls.
April, did you vote?
I abstain. Actually, I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say no. Be brave about what you're going to do.
Tired.
2 noes, 4 yes.
And one
Abstain.
abstention.
Okay?
Could I,
I have a question, please. Who made that motion and who seconded it?
I motion, Kim seconded.
Okay, that's why I had it, okay.
I just make a suggestion to the committee. I know we want to get through the agenda, and I want to get through the agenda as well. I would suggest that the committee, that we adhere to our 10:30 adjourn policy. We've been here since 5:30 as a committee, so we've been at it for almost 5 hours now. I'm willing to continue on if you want to try to move through what we have remaining quickly. But I think we all recognize that when we get to this point and been at it for more than 5 minutes, 5 hours. 5 hours. The meetings start to deteriorate. And
Well, I think we're almost finished.
We are almost finished with
We only
policy.
we have one more policy, and just the deletions, and that, I mean, the deletions just happened.
One of the things I find that when we get this long, we really do things that, need discussion.
Do we have
While we're in the shape we're in.
I'll make the motion that we accept all the deletions. Mainly, the deletions are here because they've been overridden by law. They are not necessary anymore, or they are just old policies from the 50s and other years.
I'll second with a question, if you don't mind.
I reviewed them all. Ms. Page made sure that I got them, and I reviewed them, and they can all be deleted.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'd like to
Did
make
there
a
be
motion.
one, Ken?
That was the first one we did, or the second one. I'm sorry.
We passed all that, so. Do we have a motion?
I would make a motion to adjourn post-committee member comments, if there are any.
Do we have a second? A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Opposed? This is about adjourning.
Post comment, right?
Post comment.
I'm not sure what's
Yes, it passes. Any committee comments?
I don't know.
I move that we adjourn.
We did move post comment.
Just one comment from the policy committee.
I'm sorry.
We do have a vacancy in the policy committee in that Renee has resigned. She has turned in her resignation letter. So I really would like to have 3 people on that policy, and so if our next agenda, if we could put on there that we would like to find somebody new for that. We do have many policies that, until that time, we can continue to put on the agenda without any problem, in that they're all ready to go out. But I would feel uncomfortable if only having 2 of us there at the policy meetings.
Okay, thank you. So you
Thank
need
you. I would feel
one person,
uncomfortable, too.
one more person on the, we'll put that on the August agenda.
I volunteer. I'm not working. At least till November.
So let's put it on our next agenda.
Wait a minute, I just volunteered. Why don't you be strong enough to say I don't want you on there?
If we can do that, I didn't think you could do that if it wasn't on the agenda.
We've been doing everything tonight that wasn't on the
All right,
agenda.
we'll confirm
not gonna-
that in August.
Just ask Mary and Carol, can we do this or not?
Let's discuss it.
You're going to do it in August?
Yeah, let's
Okay,
It'll be in
Doug?
October. Just volunteer.
Doug?
Thank you. Just want to steer a little back, that would help, it's productive, I want to steer back to the naming question. I'd like to offer as a consideration that we move forward however the town wants to do it, however we work together to do it. But I would like to consider that the school department, the town, whatever that committee looks like, consider naming either Forest Park Elementary or Davisville Middle after Matthew August. I've spoken to the family. This was a man, a boy, one of both Keystone favorite sons, who gave his very last measure of devotion dying in Iraq. Having spoken to the family, and they're saying they have agreed that they wouldn't mind this consideration. So I think under the circumstances we created, that if we can step forward in a way that this can be considered by all the bodies associated with it, that's an honor that I think we should bestow as well. Leave that up for consideration by our esteemed elected bodies.
Put it on the agenda for August?
Anyone, please?
We put it on the agenda, or
Let's put
we
it
don't
on
have
the
a
agenda.
policy yet as to how to do it.
I believe that if we have to go back to the
I have
discussion
no
we had
problem
tonight, we had
naming anybody with that's still in the service.
Lawyer indicated that was a town council.
So whatever the communication has to be to engage in that, if we want to look at a process, but I mean that in all seriousness. If that's where we go, this is a North Kingstown who gave his life in defending our country.
So
But the
maybe on the
statute
town
says
council
the
meeting.
town.
There may
And
be
I don't
something
want
to
to be
present before the
misquoted that I
town
didn't want to
council.
name it after.
I'd be happy to do that at a joint meeting.
Okay. Anyone else have a comment?